Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Extalia, Daedalus the Jubi's massive eye shone brightly, shifting every which way as it took in its surroundings. The brown-skinned behemoth raised its right arm and flexed it. Its clawed hand was clenched into a tight fist before it undid the action, almost as if it were experimenting with its motions. Its massive head turned as it caught wind of the sounds of conflict. Despite the seemingly apocalyptic atmosphere the Jubi brought with its birth, the soldiers of Daedalus had still moved to carry out their duty of exterminating the Exceed populace as they had now moved into the heart of the civilian area. The few airships that had managed to remain aloft through the hurricane-like winds adjusted their trajectory and faced the Jubi. Magic seals emerged from the front of the vehicles before they attacked. Streams of fire, ice, wind and lightning all converged upon their target and a massive explosion of magic energy covered the Jubi's face from view. The smoke cloud dispersed and the 10-tailed beast blinked slowly as it registered the airship's locations. The Tomo-bearing eye narrowed before it slashed the air with its claws. The heavens themselves could have been ripped apart as a massive whirlwind sliced through the airships like they weren't even there. The engines had been severed and so with the internal combustion mechanisms compromised, they exploded and a wave of fire lit up the stormy skies. Shrapnel and embers fell from above like a meteor storm upon the Exceed homeland. In addition, the Exceed and Daedalesian soldiers that were unfortunate enough to be caught within the explosive impacts of the makeshift meteor storm were forever lost to Daedalus. The Jubi roared and the entire island of Extalia quaked once more. The earth cracked and broke apart from the shockwave generated from the sound alone. Every single building within the Exceed homeland was reduced rubble. Even the majestic castle, something which survived the test of time for nearly 100 years and survived even the brutal onslaught by King Faust's invasion 40 years ago, was not safe from damage as large portions of its walls were literally reduced to pieces. So, any idea how to fight this thing? Gajeel asked as he turned to Naruto. The other Dragonslayers followed the Iron Dragonslayer's gaze as they looked to Naruto for answers. The blonde was silent for a significant amount of time as his shining eyes continued to marvel at the primordial beast of Daedalus. He then swallowed the lump he somehow developed in his throat before shaking his head. "I don't know," he replied. "In all my years present in this universe, only a dragon could ever have enough magic to match the amount that this creature has." "So we're fucked?" Gajeel asked. "If you wish to believe that, then so be it, Iron Dragon. However..." Naruto flexed his fingers and the claws of the Apocalypse Dragon cloaked his hands. "I came here for Kurama and I'm not leaving this world without him." Naruto's magic energy flared before he pushed off of the ground. The sonic boom that accompanied his rapid ascent caught the attention of the Jubi, its massive red eye zeroing in on the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. The blonde directed a powerful slash that raked across the Jubi's eye. Magic made flesh being ripped apart as if it were butter that met a hot knife. However, while the strike did indeed make the Jubi cry out, the roar was most likely to have been out of annoyance rather than pain. The eye glowed as the tissue knitted itself back together at a rate that almost seemed instantaneous. The 10-tailed beast then lashed out with one of its massive limbs which moved faster than Naruto anticipated. "What the?" He had no time to complete his exclamation as the clawed forehand crashed down on his body. His body felt as if it were being compressed by Acnologia's own limbs. If he weren't in his drive mode, Naruto presumed his entire skeleton would have been shattered into bits and pieces from the blow, while whatever was left would have been reduced to a bloody streak on the grounds of Extalia as his rapidly moving form slammed into the earth and carved a trench of dust and dirt. Oni-san. The now partially pink-haired preteen made her way over to her surrogate brother and helped him into a sitting position. The son of Acnologia shook his head to regain his bearings before giving a nod to Wendy as a sign that he was alright. "Well, that didn't work," Gajeel quipped. "Gajeel-san." Juvia gave a look of disapproval to the Iron Drive user. "What? It didn't?" The daughter of Livia's disproving gaze intensified before shifting to concern as she watched the Apocalypse Dragonslayer climb back to his feet. "Fujin-san, what are your orders?" Naruto's mind raced as the Jubi stared at them, as if waiting to see what actions they would try next. Naruto's eyes closed and he took a deep breath to mentally prepare himself as he finished surveying the landscape of the floating island. "It will take some time to find the opening we need to adhere to the task of trying to defeat this beast, so we'll have to hold our ground," Naruto explained as he held the Jubi's stare. "It can be damaged, but its regeneration speed is far superior to my own and even Sky Dragon's." Its mere presence changing the atmosphere speaks volumes of its power, and we need to gain at least some form of information on what the hell this thing is. With these abilities, I am quite ashamed to admit that a concrete plan cannot be laid out as there are too many unknown variables to consider while fighting it. The best plan of action would be to strike as swiftly and as harshly as we can while also aiming to limit its range of movement. So Otuto, what do you have in mind? Haku asked before gesturing to the apocalyptic weather status of Daedalus. With this weather and not to mention the lack of actual cover, we have nowhere to hide for a surprise attack if that is what you're going for. Juvia suggests to target the legs and immobilize the beast, the daughter of Levia said. In that case, I can try and freeze its tails in place to give us the chance to attack, Haku noted. Your suggestions are noted, Naruto stated before flaring his magic energy. Get ready. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Martyr. The other Dragonslayers swallowed the lumps in their throats, fear being buried as deeply as it could possibly go as they brought up their fighting spirits. Their magical auras burst into existence and they nodded to the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. The Jubi bared its teeth, a growl that sounded like the beginnings of an earthquake rising up from deep within its throat. The growl escalated in volume and intensity until the Jubi finally unleashed a full-blown, thunderous roar. The shockwave tore the ground apart and parts of the floating island broke off, falling into the cloudy abyss beneath it. The Dragonslayers held their ground and met the Jubi's roars with their own. The behemoth then began to charge, raising its arm into the air and smashing it down with crater-creating force with the intent of crushing the Dragonslayers. They had all quickly managed to avoid the surprisingly quick strike before rotating in the air and digging their heels into the ground. They skidded to a halt a few meters away from their opponent. As many a great plan should start off, should we provide a distraction? Fu asked rhetorically. She had worked long enough with Naruto to know how he would operate, and so she turned to Wendy. So little cousin, wanna give me a hand? I will do what I can, the blue and pink-haired Dragonslayer nodded. Il Vernier. The supplementary spell of Sky Dragonslayer magic came into effect and both its user and Fu felt as if their bodies were lighter than before. Furyu no Hai Subasa. Wind flowed and swirled, taking the shape of two pairs of dragon wings that seemed to sprout forth from Fu's back. Let's go, Fu's and Wendy's leg muscles tensed, coiling like springs before they pushed off. They cratered the earth beneath them, zooming through the air at supersonic speeds. Fu took Rika's crescents of wind encased her arms. Furyu no Shinku Renpa. Eel arms. Sonic booms echoed throughout the air as Fu slashed the Jubi's body with her vacuum serial blades spell. The high-speed blades of wind were augmented in their power and speed due to Wendy's arm spell. The attack sliced through skin and tissue like it was made of tissue paper. The daughter of Cyclonus struck from every single possible angle and at what she believed to be various weak points, aiming at the beast's joints, eye and its throat. Her efforts proved to be for naught, however, as the wind drive user could only grit her teeth in annoyance as she saw the Jubi's flesh knit itself back together just as it had when Natuto attacked it. The Jubi snarled, lashing out with its arms and tails to strike at the insect of a human that dared to attack it. With the spectacular aerial maneuverability brought about from having two pairs of wings, Fu took Wendy in her arms and easily flew around each and every one of the Jubi's attacks. Naruto observed from afar until he saw the beast's mouth open to try and swallow the two airborne Dragonslayers. Iron Dragon, Nei-chan. Attack its jaw muscles now, slice through them. Tetsuryuken. Hyoryu no Yokugen. A light green and ice blue magic seal formed in front of their respective Dragonslayers as Gajil's arm morphed into a sword of black iron and Haku's own limb was covered in ice that took on the shape of a dragon wing. Both weapons were then slammed against the magic seals, lengthening across the battlefield at a rapid pace until they reached the Jubi's face. The sound of the blades of iron and ice slicing through the Jubi's masseter muscles was music to their ears. Sky Dragon, Naruto called out to his surrogate sister. The Sky Drive user nodded as she was spun around and hurled towards the behemoth by the daughter of Cyclonus. Wendy took a deep inhalation of air, condensing it in her lungs and merging it with her magic. Tenryu no Hoko. The swirling vortex of high-velocity winds raced down the Jubi's throat. The Jubi's eye widened in shock at the sudden influx of air and its body bloated as more and more wind built up in its body. Fire Dragon, Karyu no Hoko. The son of Igneal needed no further prompting from the Apocalypse Dragonslayer as he unleashed the powerful conflagration from his throat. Wendy quickly brought an end to her own roar to fly out of the way just as Natsu's own roar slammed into the Jubi's face. A powerful fiery explosion occurred upon contact, but the attack's true purpose was revealed as the blue and white flames funneled their way down the Jubi's throat. The behemoth's already bloated body suddenly expanded to even larger proportions as the winds were ignited within its belly. If they weren't fighting for their lives, the Dragonslayers would have found the way the Jubi's torso expanded in an almost cartoonish fashion with smoke wafting lazily from its mouth to be very amusing. Haku Nei-chan. I'm already on the way, Otuto. True to her word, Haku was quick to spring into action as she was already gliding across Extalia with an ice road she crafted with each step she made. A cloud of frost flowed from her hands before she dragged the tips of her fingers against the ground as she reached the Jubi's location, turning the entire surface into a frozen wasteland beneath the Jubi's body. Hyoryu no Shirafune. Haku swung her arms in an upward motion and the ice responded to her will as she activated the white sword spell. Numerous spikes and blades of ice spring forth, tearing through the Jubi's underbelly and tails. The Jubi growled, glancing back at the ice which held it in place. The world seemed to tremble once more as the Jubi called upon its primordial powers. Gao. The Jubi raised its head to the skies above and with a boom of thunder, massive bolts of lightning fell from the clouds and struck Extalia. The icy ground was shattered along with Haku's ice weapons, allowing the beast to free itself. Once it regained its mobility, the 10-tailed beast then unleashed a powerful burst of magic from its body. A dome of magic energy ripped through Extalia, destroying the remaining pieces of ice that had been stuck in its body while also sending the Dragonslayers crashing into various areas of the Exceed Kingdom. With the diminutive opponents now a fair distance away, the Jubi took the opportunity to slam its tails down on the ground. Its tails dug beneath Extalia before bursting forth and wrapping themselves securely around some of the fallen buildings. The Jubi flung the broken pieces of infrastructure at the Dragonslayers with terrific force, visible streams of air resistance trailing behind the newly formed projectiles. Yoryu no Bakuhatsu. Roshi was quick to intervene as he slammed his hands down on the ground. A bright orange-colored magic seal appeared in front of the lava Dragonslayer. A vast area of earth began to turn red and yellow due to the intense heat that was generated. It began to swell, rising at a rapid pace until a massive column of lava burst forth from the depths of the earth. The lava dragon's eruption spell melted the massive pieces of infrastructure before Haku saw her moment to step forward. Hyoryu no Hyojinheki. With a burst of magic energy, Haku unleashed a violent burst of cold from her hands as she laid them against the wall of lava. In almost an instant, the lava cooled and became a towering structure of blackened earth. At 10 stories tall and 15 meters across, the wall was quite an impressive structure. It was a shame they would have to use it as a weapon now. Gajeel-kun, get it airborne, Haku said as she turned to the red-eyed Dragonslayer. Can do. Gajeel converted his arms into sharp swords before spinning on his heels to build up momentum. Tetsuryuken. The iron drive user slashed the ground and the entire length of the massive defensive structure was now cut free from the earth. He then went with the spin of his strike and dug his heels into the ground to stabilize himself before swinging his right leg back. Fujin, it's your turn. The son of Metallicana called out as he delivered a powerful kick to the underside of the wall and sent it skyward. The massive wall arched through the air, but it was quickly brought to a halt as Naruto flickered into existence at its current position. Bright blue eyes bathed in ethereal white shone brightly as Naruto dug his fingertips into the dense rock formation. With a roar, Naruto spun rapidly and then hurled the newly formed projectile at the 500-foot behemoth as if it was the Rasen Shuriken. However, as the black stone wall neared its target, the Jubi curled its massive hand into a tight fist. It reared its arm back. Boom! But before the beast could deliver the punch to counter the attack, Fu fell from the heavens with a sonic boom. Her form was practically a streak of gray-green as her magic outlined her form and the razor-sharp winds encased her legs. She went into a series of front flips just a few moments before to build up momentum. The daughter of the sky was then revealed to have been latched onto Fu's back, her body glowing with sky-blue magic energy. Eel arms. The timing of the spell was spot on and Fu's body shone with magic as her power increased threefold. Furyu no Rankyaku. With a roar, the mint-haired wind drive user delivered twin crescent of winds that tore through the Jubi's forearm and continued in their descent to leave massive scars in the earth.
Yes, the wind and sky user smirked confidently. Time seemed to slow down as they watched the limb fall from the Jubi's body and the lava wall just a second away from smashing into its ugly face. However, Fu's orange eyes widened when a blur of motion was seen on the edge of her periphery and a massive shadow encompassed her form.
Fuck! Fu turned around so her back was facing the oncoming attack and in one fluid motion, ripped Wendy from off her back and held the 12-year-old tightly against her chest. Eel armor. Wendy's spell augmented their durability as if it hadn't helped at all. Even with the already impressive natural durability that came with her drive mode, the moment the Jubi's tail smashed into her, she felt her body bend, folding around the rear appendage. She wasn't sure if the sound that met her ears were her bones snapping or the sound of the shockwave that accompanied the blow, but either way, it hurt like hell. The blow then registered with Fu's body and she rocketed through the air, smashing through the lava wall and breaking it apart just as the Jubi's tail strike had continued in its motion to reduce it to rubble. Fire Dragon, you've learned to alter the consistency of your flames to make it seem solid, correct? Naruto asked. Yeah, why? You're going to do a unison raid with me. What? Natsu's eyes widened. Are you sure you want me to be the guy you want to do this with? You are the only one who is able to do this. It won't work as well with the lava element, but note that the timing needs to be right. The son of Agnologia's eyes glowed brightly as he stared into Natsu's dark-colored ones. Can I trust you to do this, son of Igniel? Natsu sweated as he felt the lump form in his throat. Here he was, fighting a giant monstrosity alongside other Dragonslayers, and now he was being trusted by one of his greatest enemies to take part in a unison raid attack, something which required the utmost cooperation between 2 or more mages. It was challenging to say the least, downright impossible at the most. However, Natsu gulped, swallowing the lump of doubt that had formed in his throat before grinning toothily, flames erupting forth around his body. You're speaking my language, Fujin Teme. I'm all fired up. The blonde nodded before pointing at the Jubi. Get behind that monster and I'll give you the signal after I catch Wind Dragon and Sky Dragon. Natsu nodded. Blue and white flames burst forth from beneath his feet as he rocketed across the battleground, circling around the Jubi in a wide arc. Naruto watched as the pink-haired fairy tale mage was then forced to make evasive maneuvers to avoid the strikes from the Jubi's tails. Iron Dragon. The son of Metallicana looked to the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. Start running and get ready to catch them. Gajil's eyes widened when Naruto pushed off of the ground, cratering it as he launched himself skyward. A jet stream quickly formed behind the blonde-haired Dragonslayer as he climbed higher into the sky before unleashing a burst of wind-based magic to increase his speed. The sound barrier shattered as Naruto appeared before the 2 wielders of the wind. He quickly caught the 2 drive users in one hand, utilizing their motion to spin and build up momentum. Iron Dragon. Catch. He hurled the 2 through the air and the Iron Dragonslayer proved to be very good at following his instructions.
Come on, come on, come on, gotcha. The Iron Dragonslayer's speed proved to be impressive despite his increased weight as he managed to run into position and hop into the air to catch the 2 airborne Dragonslayers. He clutched the 2 of them tightly as he fell back to ground zero, the ground cratering beneath his feet as he landed. He gently rested the 2 of them down as they groaned in pain. Looks like it was my turn to catch you in midair. Guess we're even now.
Hee, I see what you did there. Hee, ow, it hurts to laugh. Fu spoke through gritted teeth as she rose into a sitting position and patted the Iron Dragonslayer on his shoulder. Thanks for the save. Wendy, you alright? Thank you for protecting me, Fu-san. The Sky Dragonslayer gave her adoptive cousin a small smile as she brushed back a lock of pink hair. You too, Gajil-san. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden, a rondo of wind and flame. The daughter of Grandine directed her cute smile to the son of Metallicana, but she became confused as she found herself looking at a flabbergasted expression on the Iron Dragonslayer's face. Fu-san, what's wrong with Gajil-san? She turned to the mint-haired Dragonslayer beside her and found that the Wind Dragonslayer was also bearing a similar expression. Gajil-san? Fu-san? What's wrong? Wendy was silenced as the 2 older Dragonslayer mages gripped her by the top of her head and shifted it the direction of Naruto's position in the air. Upon doing so, the Sky Dragonslayer mimicked Gajil's and Fu's expressions. The other Dragonslayers on the ground looked up in awe at the black and blue scaled Apocalypse Drive user, and their eyes widened as they gazed upon the massive, screeching, rotating shuriken in his hands. What is that? Wendy whispered. I can feel the wind inside that spell. Fu commented. There's so much of it. It's not just wind in there, Fu-chan. Haku said before pointing to the orb of blue and black in its center. There's a great deal of pure eternano in its core, and his Dragonslayer magic is keeping it intact. This boy just keeps surprising me, Roshi chuckled. Ichi nin no otoko unison raid. His arm reared back as he roared and unleashed the screeching force of magic held in his hand. The attack sped through the air, its very motion unleashing storms of wind blades which tore through anything nearby in a 10-kilometer diameter. Psycho Fuuton. Rasen's Hurricane. The Jubi roared and struck with its tails to combat the shuriken of wind and energy. However, the one-eyed beast gained what could only be described as a look of surprise as the one-man unison raid spell sliced through the rear appendages. Not yet, Naruto thought. The Rasen shuriken continued on its course and reached the Jubi's neck. The beast's roar was silenced when the slicing winds even continued through its neck, effectively decapitating it. However, Naruto still did not detonate his spell as it flew through the air. Not yet. It was only once it reached a bit beyond the Jubi's hindquarters did he suddenly cry out to the waiting Fire Dragonslayer as jets of blue and white flame kept him aloft. Now? Fire Dragon, throw the Rasenshuriken at the body. Doryah. Natsu's body erupted into flames and he stretched his arm out after the Rasen shuriken. The high-speed culmination of tearing wind blades was chased after by a massive hand made entirely out of fire. His quick reflexes and mastery over fire proved to be paramount in that moment as the clawed hand of fire grabbed onto the spiraling shuriken. Suck on this, bastard. The son of Igneel threw the dense shuriken of magic down towards the Jubi's body, but just as he threw it, the swirling winds had done just as Natsu had allowed and just as Naruto had hoped they would. Having drawn in a significant amount of Natsu's dragon fire, the screeching weapon shone brighter than it had ever done before as it burned with the flames of Igneel. With an outer coat of dragon fire, an inner layer of wind and a core of literally apocalyptic energy, the newly forged spell crashed down on the Jubi's body. Once it did, Naruto detonated it. The screeching of the Rasen shuriken increased in pitch and the spiraling shuriken expanded. The newly formed spell from the two most unlikely allies ripped through the monster's body to generate a raging firestorm. The blue and white flames burned flesh while the sharp winds ripped into the magic-made body of the Jubi on a microscopic level until a powerful explosion marked the climax of the spell. The area of Extalia burned to ash and a dome of fire. Wind and energy tore the land asunder, its resulting shockwave reaching all the way to the opposite end of Extalia. The light of the explosion then died down and the area where the Jubi was had been reduced to a massive burning crater that was easily twice the size of a mountain and seemed deep enough to have burrowed halfway through Extalia's structure. Blue and white flames burned brightly within the basin as all eyes gazed upon the result of such power being unleashed upon the world. Roshi-sensei. Did you see that, Roshi-sensei? Natsu exclaimed giddily as he flew back down beside the lava Dragonslayers. Did you see what I did? The son of Volcanus chuckled, nodding as he patted his pupil on the head. Yes I did. You did very well. I concur. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer planted his feet on the ground as he landed beside Wendy. Imouto? I'm fine, Oni-san. My healing factor is much faster thanks to drive mode. She flexed her right arm and patted her bicep. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer stared at the youngest Dragonslayer with a blank look on his face. So it seems. The son of Acnologia then turned to meet the Fire Dragonslayer's grinning face. What? Why are you smiling like an idiot, Fire Dragon? Nothin'. The 17-year-old mage chuckled. It's just, well, I thought it was kinda cool the way we just teamed up. Didn't think that as enemies working together could make that kind of destruction. The Rasen Shuriken is the third most powerful spell in my arsenal and is composed primarily of wind. Obviously combining it with dragonfire would increase its destructive capabilities. The son of two wizard saints explained. Though the odds of it working out as well as it did are actually quite surprising. Well, a new team-up creating new unison raid spell. Roshi laughed lightly as he patted the two younger Dragonslayers on their shoulders. Such a powerful spell is obviously going to require a name. And I've got just the thing. I think it should be called Unison Raid. Korin Shibu Shiroi no Ya Zeroshiki, Unison Raid. Nimbus Gale White Arrow Formation. 0. Silence seemed to reign supreme between the 7 other Dragonslayers. They turned to each other before blinking with a confused tilt of their heads as they looked back at their lava using compatriot with raised eyebrows. Huh? Was the intelligent reply. Boo? Fu gave a thumbs down. Too long. Fu-chan pretty much says it right there. Haku agreed. Juvia agrees with Haku-san and Fu-san. Not to mention it doesn't even look like a damn arrow to begin with. Gajeel pointed out. Now I'm starting to remember why you told me Volcanus always used to get angry at you whenever you made suggestions to rename the Dragonslayer spells he taught you. Natsu said with a look of realization. It's because you suck at it. Roshi curled up in a ball and drew small circles with his volcanic temperature digits. Even my own student. You all are so mean to me. I'm the oldest one here. You should all be calling me Roshi-senpai. There, Roshi-san. If it's any consolation. I do still want to learn from you how to make lightning with Fu-san. Wendy said with a small smile. Roshi's lava-colored eyes brightened as he looked up at the Skydrive wielder as if she were a divine being sent by the dragons themselves. Wendy-chan. You're such a sweet girl, he cried, waterfalls of lava spilling from his eyes like tears. This idiot. The others thought as they looked at how Wendy was scratching the back of her head nervously while a growing puddle of lava formed between the two Dragonslayers. Though their moment of humor was interrupted when Sky Dragonslayer's nose twitched as she felt a shift in the wind. She tilted her head slightly and sniffed the air. Cat? The pink and blue-haired preteen tilted her head in confusion. The other Dragonslayers took note of the feline scent as well, but Natsu's ears twitched as he took in the familiar voice that called out his name. N-A-A-A-A-A-T-S-U-U-U-U-U-U-U-U-U, happy? The Fire Dragonslayer turned in the direction of the Extalian castle to see a blur of blue zipping through the air towards him. Fairy Tail's resident talking feline crashed into the fire drive user, burying his muzzle into the rose-haired mage's chest. I was so scared, Natsu, Happy cried. There was an attack on the castle, and there were soldiers and a cat that looked like Uchiha from Blue Pegasus. It was terrifying. Natsu blinked in confusion for a moment before gently stroking the Exceed's head. It's alright, Happy. I'm glad to see you're alright, but… Natsu's confusion returned as Happy's large black eyes met his dark-colored ones. What were you doing at the castle? Oh, that was where Charles Chan and I ended up when we went through Mistogan's portal and got separated from everyone else.
Charles-san is with you. Wendy asked. Aye, sir. Happy raised a paw and nodded in confirmation. She was right behind me. Did you know her mother was the queen of the Exceed? The moment Happy said that, Charles arrived and was shown to be assisting said mother in her flight due to having only one wing. The Queen of Extalia had shed her royal cloak as it would have weighed her down during the flight, revealing her to be dressed in a pair of black pants and a pink tunic. The two white-furred Exceed landed on the ground before the group of Dragonslayers, both panting in exertion from their flight. Happy, you idiot. I told you to wait on us and not to rush ahead. Charles glared at her fellow Exceed, causing the male feline to scratch the back of his head in embarrassment. Hee, sorry Charles-chan. I saw Natsu and I got really excited. HMPH. Well, at least you were able to pinpoint where they were. Charles-san. Oof. Charles almost lost the wind from her lung as Wendy's larger form barreled into her. The two females rolled across the ground before coming into a stop with Wendy in a sitting position. The blue and pink-haired pre-teen laughed giddily as she hugged her best friend tightly.
I'm so glad you're alright, Charles-san. I was so worried after we went through the anima and I couldn't find you. Charles' sweat dropped as she watched the SkyDrive user cry a waterfall of tears. The white-furred Exceed sighed in exasperation, a smile adorning her face as she raised a paw and patted the young girl on her head. It's alright, Wendy. I was worried about you too. The two females looked up at each other with brown eyes meeting brown eyes encircled by a ring of sky blue. It was at that moment the Extalian princess was now face to face with her Dragonslayer partner and took note of her physical changes. Charles raised an eyebrow as she observed Wendy's new appearance, a moment of silence passing between the two. Well. She raised a lock of pink and blue hair. You look different. Wendy's face faltered with a sweat drop. That's all you can say? The female feline shrugged her tiny shoulders. Well, unless you know what to say when your best friend suddenly has partially pink hair and scaly skin, I'm gonna stick with what I said. You have a point. Wendy said with a nervous chuckle. Though, Happy-san said you're a princess? I don't understand. Charles turned to Shaggy with a blank expression. It's a long story. And one which we don't have the time for, my daughter. Shaggy said as she looked up at the Dragonslayers. We were able to hide out within the castle's underground chamber, so we were safe before the castle fell. However, we did come out and remained hidden just in time to witness your escalating battle with the Jubi. The Jubi? Fu voiced her confusion. Is that what that thing is called? Indeed, young Dragonslayer. Shaggy nodded. And while it may have been an unintentional act, you all have my utmost gratitude. Halting the Jubi's advances towards Extalia has spared the remainder of my kingdom from falling into ruin. If only for a few moments. She frowned deeply as she surveyed the fallen architecture. The tattered flag of the Edalesian monarchy billowed in the wind and the fires from both combat and fallen airships burned brightly in contrast to the dark atmosphere of the Jubi's still-present storm. Human and Exceed corpses littered the burning, crater-filled island. Shaggy's tiny paws clenching into tight fists, tears pooling at the edges of her eyes. I held my kingdom for a century, but to think I would lose it so swiftly. She took a shaky breath and wiped away her tears. Shaggy-sama. Happy muttered softly as he watched the older Exceed being forced to push down the emotions for the sake of not appearing weak. Such was the task of being a ruler. I'm sorry for having you allow time is of the essence. Shaggy pointed over to the burning crater. You have all fought valiantly and your attack to kill the beast was undoubtedly powerful, but the Jubi will not be beaten. Not even by a spell of that caliber. You say it like it's such an unimpressive attack. Fu muttered with a sweat drop. Make no mistake, Dragonslayers. Your attacks are indeed powerful, especially your final attack. But the Jubi is magic given sentience. The Dragonslayers all stared at Shaggy in silence, though Fu, Gajeel and Natsu were more expressive in their shock as their eyes widened. The silence was then broken as Naruto's boots crunched the broken earth when he walked towards the diminutive Exceed. You say you are the queen of Edalis? Naruto knelt down to better meet her gaze. That is correct. She nodded stiffly. I am Queen Shaggy. Ruler of Extalia, queen of the Exceed and proxy of the Nine. I was created by the Nine and so I know the secrets of their pasts. They were once the Jubi before their own creator, Hagoromo Otsutsuki and his brother, Hamura, defeated the Jubi and split it apart to create them. Those two were the greatest of mages during the times of ancient Edalis, powerful enough to rival even your Earthland's Merlin. They fought that monster over the course of countless days and nights, and even then, they could not truly defeat it. They had to separate the beast's very magical essence from its physical body before going even further to split that physical body into numerous pieces and sealing them away in the various celestial bodies you see floating within our dimension. I'm not going to try and understand everything you said before that, but from what I can gather, Fu's orange eyes narrowed. You're saying that we can't kill it? That is correct, my dear. The female Exceed replied. I am sorry to say that Edalis may actually meet its end here. As a being made purely of magic energy, it has no need for sustenance. It is an immortal, primordial deity that made Edalis into the magic-less dimension that it is today. If you wish to continue your battle with the Jubi, I cannot stop you, but please. I implore to find a way to shift the battleground elsewhere. The others all looked around as Shaggy gestured to her fallen kingdom. I have lost so much already. Within and beyond my castle is where there may be what little survivors left of my exceed. Please find a way to get the battle off of Extalia so that they may live, please. We'll do it. Gajeel stated with a nod. You agreed to that awfully quick, Fu said with a raised eyebrow. That's because the exceed are important lives that must be protected. I cannot call myself a Dragonslayer. He pointed sharply in the direction Shaggy's castle. If I don't one day get a flying cat of my own, damn it. That's your reason, Natsu and Fu exclaimed. Yes, Gajeel shouted back with just as much conviction. All of you have cats, Fujin, the brat, even Salamander has one. I have one too, Haku said cheekily. See, the Iron Drive user exclaimed. I want a flying cat and I will not have my eventual partner die. Kuragane, you're an idiot. Natsu deadpanned. I don't want to hear that from you of all people, Salamander. The Fire and Iron Dragonslayers crashed their heads against each other, the metaphorical and literal fires of conflict burning around them, until Naruto smacked them both upside the head. Calm yourselves. The Apocalypse Drive user sighed before turning back to Shaggy. I understand you want to protect your kingdom and your people, Shaggy. We cannot promise the survival of your people, and given the state of the battle so far, even if we do manage to change the stage, you will lose more of Extalia in the process. I understand, Dragonslayer. Shaggy nodded. Just, not beyond the castle. I do not care much for the land itself, but if anything beyond there falls, then my people are lost and lives are something not even I, as the proxy of the Nine, can fix. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer was silent at that point. The Dragonslayers then all paused in their shenanigans as their ears twitched. Outside the realm of the storm raging around them, a new sound graced their senses. The sound was dull and heavy, and was accompanied by the sound of the earth shaking. Their eyes all widened as they managed to localize the sound, and their heads all slowly turned in the direction of the fire pit created by Natsu and Naruto's unison raid attack. No, Haku whispered. But how? It was destroyed on a microscopic level. Even a being of pure energy shouldn't be able to recover so quickly. Naruto's assumption was proved to be oh so very wrong as the ground continued to rumble. The flames of the pit parted slightly as 10 mighty tails rose from within like charmed serpents, and the Tomo-patterned eye of red glowed in the center of the shining blue and white flames. Insert music. Boruto the movie Hard Battle, GROAR. The titanic roar of the Jubi ripped through the atmosphere of Edalis once more. 500 feet of towering magic energy and pure primordial, bestial rage climbed out of the fiery crater as if it were a demon from the 9th layer of hell itself. Lightning fell like arrows. The winds and rain increased in their intensities, and Extalia literally began to break apart from the unrestrained power of the 10-tailed beast as it once again stood upon the island's surface. Wind Dragon. What do you need me to do, boss? Fu asked with a joking tone. We need to try get them out of the line of fire. He gestured to the Exceed. I'm sure Fire Dragon and Sky Dragon would not be too keen on having their Exceed partners die in our battle. Good point. Now, make a vacuum. Naruto stated. Unstoppable power of the 9 or not. Even Kurama needed to breathe. We'll move on from there. Fu nodded in acknowledgement and gave a small pat on the head to Wendy as she was finished healing her up as best as she could. The Wind Dragonslayer then formed her wings of wind before taking off through the air and hovered for a moment, cracking her joints in anticipation. Well, my terrible beastie. If I can't hack at you, then I'll just suffocate you. Gray-green magic energy outlined Fu's body and the winds bent to her will. Fu raised her arms into the air and violent streams of high-speed air currents swirled around the Jubi before condensing. Furyu no Shinku Kengoku. Fu clasped her hands together as she summoned forth her vacuum prison spell. The winds compressed into a tight sphere that was void of any air, and to ensure its incarceration, Fu made the dome of wind shrink in diameter. The Jubi growled, its massive body surveying its shrinking prison. The lack of air did not bother it, though it felt its body being pushed from various angles, and so it raised its forelimbs, crossing them in front of its chest. Its muscles tensed before it lashed out and crashed its claws against the winds and began to push back. Fu's eyes widened as she felt the resistance against her spell. No way. She gritted her teeth, pumping more of her magic into the spell. However, the Jubi's might proved to be far above that of the Wind Dragonslayers. With a roar, the Jubi widened the vacuum prison through sheer physical might alone before dropping its arms and spinning around rapidly. Its 10 tails lashed out like mighty whips, ripping through the prison, and even generated a windstorm of its own. Fu quickly took the winds for her own to replenish the magic she had lost from her offensive. What do we do now? Fu yelled to Naruto. The blonde gnashed his teeth, glaring at the Jubi with annoyance. High-speed regeneration. No need for air. It was practically unstoppable. No, even dragons can die, then so can this monstrosity. He muttered to himself before glancing behind him, observing the cowering Exceed trio. He then turned to Natsu. Fire dragon, can you do multiple fireballs? Stupid question, Fujin Teme. Of course I can. Natsu raised his arms into the air. Blue and white flames body. Multiple streams of fire then lanced through the air before pooling to form 10 massive fireballs. While these were noticeable smaller than the one he had used against Dorma Anum, which would have been placed at the size of a whale, these were still impressive in their size as each one was approximately the size of an elephant. Karyu no Kouen. Wind Dragon, Imouto, Tenryu no Ranyoku, Furyu no Kamikaze. Wendy's Stormwing spell summoned forth massive wings of swirling air which she flapped to generate a powerful burst of wind that melded with Fu's own holy wind spell. The two waves of wind rushed across the battleground and increased the size and intensity of Natsu's flames. The Jubi adjusted its position slightly, its humanoid body now in a more pronounced all-fours position. Its 10 tails arched over its head, converging at a single point in front of its gaping mouth. Suddenly, a burst of magic energy was unleashed from its body. Bubbles of red negative Eternano and blue positive Eternano then collected in front of its mouth to form a tight violet-black sphere. No fucking way. Is that? Fu's eyes widened. It is. Roshi nodded. What is that supposed to mean? I don't know what it is, Gajeel exclaimed. The amount of Eternano in that ball is fucking immense. Can we even survive that thing? With the combined magic of the 9, I assumed this thing would be able to use the Bijudama, but I hoped it wouldn't use it at all. That spell is the strongest attack in the 9's arsenal. Massive amounts of Eternano concentrated in a single point that can either be launched as a projectile or a beam. Kurama's largest attack could dwarf a Jupiter cannon blast, and its destructive force could make the Jupiter cannon look like a firecracker when at full force. This is far larger than any Bijudama I've seen. What will we do then? Like we've been doing throughout this entire battle, there's going to be a change in plans. Naruto replied. Iron Dragon, make the strongest defensive spell that you can make within the next few seconds. Imouto, support him. The son of Metallicana was quick on the draw to follow the order as he slammed his hands down on the ground. Eel arms. Magic energy flared from Gajiel's body as Wendy placed her hands against the older Dragonslayer's back. The Iron Drive user had 3 massive green magic circles forming in front of him and the others. Tetsuryu no Rashomon. The ground then rumbled before multiple massive gates made of black iron rose out from the magic seals, each one beautifully decorated with the image of a dragon's head on its front. They will have to do. Naruto muttered as he then took his position in front of Gajeel. Oi, what are you doing? Gajeel exclaimed. Your defenses are obviously well crafted, Iron Dragon. But they will do little against the Bijudama of this magnitude. It will slow it down, reduce the energy in it as well as its momentum. But once that last gate breaks down, I'm going to try and eat as much of it as I can before it detonates. You all need to get out of the way of the explosion in that time because I can assure you, the explosion will be deadly. What? The other Dragonslayers made their disbelief known to the son of Agnologia. Naruto then walked over to Wendy and took off his golden flame necklace. He knelt down and handed it to his surrogate Imouto with a small smile, ruffling her hair. You keep that safe for me, okay? She nodded, tears lining her eyes as she gripped the necklace tightly. That's my little sky dragon. He bent down and kissed the younger Dragonslayer on her forehead before climbing back to his feet. Prepare yourselves, Naruto announced as the Jubi unleashed the powerful blast. It ripped through Natsu's oncoming fireballs, and even the floating land masses in the near and far distances away from Extelia were not spared from the destructive power of the tailed beast bomb. Massive fiery explosions of energy lit up the stormy atmosphere of Edelus as the 10-tailed beast shifted its head to the side until it collided with Gajiel's Rashomon gates. The ground broke apart as the thick slabs of draconian magic-crafted iron did their job to hold up against the beam of destruction. However, as the blonde Dragonslayer had predicted, it held up for no more than an instant. The second gate held on for a little longer than its predecessor, but it too was speared through. Each and every gate that Gajiel had summoned was quickly being torn through by the massive stream of destruction. Naruto gritted his teeth in anticipation as its momentum was beginning to slow down somewhat, but he noted that it wasn't enough to make any sort of significant difference. The attack then reached the final gate as it bore a spiderweb of cracks immediately upon having to combat the Jubi's attack. Naruto then took a strong horse stance as the final Rashomon gate was broken through, turning into molten slag by the intense energy of the Bijudama. The moment it did though, the energy flowed from its tip and into Naruto's mouth as he took a deep breath in. Magic energy in its purest form was swallowed at a surprisingly fast pace, and it was quite a large amount to try and eat. Magic continued to be ingested, and working overtime was an understatement to what Naruto's body was doing to try and keep up with the output of the Jubi's attack. His lungs and stomach burned, and despite the amount of energy he could consume being described as practically limitless, Naruto felt as if he was actually approaching a limit, as what felt like an immeasurable length of time was actually only 30 seconds. Groar. The bellow of rage ripped through the land once more, and that very moment was when Naruto had reached his limit and the Jubi relinquished its control over the concentrated beam of demonic magic energy. Its humanoid jaws snapped shut and the entire beam rippled like a wave as it destabilized. The Bijudama then shone like a bright orange star before it detonated. The force of the resulting shockwave was so intense that it rippled through the entirety of Extalia itself, and the rapidly expanding dome of magic energy reduced everything it came into contact with, to dust. Veins of orange made its way through the cracks in Extalia's structure before bursting forth and caused a large portion of the island, particularly the portion where the Dragonslayers had been standing, to burst apart and fall through the clouds. The explosion then died down, vanishing as quickly as it had come. Unbelievable. The amount of power, it's just unbelievable. Haku commented as she, the other Dragonslayers and the three Exceed all watched the result of the Jubi's attack from atop a small hill of rubble, a few fallen Edelysian airships and possibly a number of corpses. In the time Naruto had taken to try and hold back the Bijudama, they had managed to collect themselves and move out of the way of the attack. However, they were cutting it very close when they were escaping the blast radius of the powerful spell as Happy was blowing on the tip of his tail, which had been singed by the searing energy. It vaporized it. Shaggy let her tears fall freely this time as she looked at the dense mushroom cloud of fire and dust climbed high into the air. My Extalia. My beautiful Extalia. She planted her face into her paws and wept for the state of her nation. If it wiped out half of this island with just that. Roshi gulped audibly. Forget the island. Gajeel exclaimed as he pointed to the empty areas of space before them. There were islands, and I think that was a moon up there. It blew up. A fucking moon? How the hell do we handle something that can probably be classified as a planet buster? Natsu clenched his hands into tight fists and gritted his teeth as he watched the monstrosity before them continue to lay waste to the entire dimension. Natsu. I'm scared, Happy muttered as he hugged the rose-haired Dragonslayer. Oni-san. Charles gripped Wendy's forearms, saying nothing as she was being held in the sky drive. You just didn't have the heart to voice what was on everyone's minds. Did the Ogono Fujin survive? That question was answered a few moments later as the mushroom cloud was dispersed by the hurricane-force winds of the Jubi's storm. With everything behind him having been completely disintegrated by the Bijudama, the black and blonde-haired man stood at the very edge of what remained of Extalia. Red wisps of magic energy lay at his feet, showing he had made a last-ditch effort to try and shield himself with the 5-point elemental seal. But not even a powerful defense that shielded him from all magic attacks was capable of handling the Jubi's full wrath. My barrier didn't even last 10 seconds, this creature's might. It's terrifying. Naruto admitted to himself. He glanced to his side as he felt the pain of his broken arm easing its way through the adrenaline. His healing factor would deal with that soon enough. He couldn't help but chuckle as he looked down at his trembling legs as they fought to keep the full weight of his body upright. It was admirable that the son of two wizard saints had not completely collapsed, let alone fallen to his knees. Insert music. Zatch Bell, a hero is born. Guess Ka-chan's stubborn disposition is genetic. He looked up at the Jubi with a glare before glancing down at himself. I've been in this universe for so long, fought so many battles, and yet. After all of those things, I've never once had the opportunity to unleash my full power against an opponent. I always hold myself back for the sake of the fight because that is what I raised to do, to never show my enemies two sans magic unless they were worthy of it in my eyes. I was raised as an engine of destruction by the very incarnation of a cataclysm, and now I think, no. Naruto shook his head with a toothy grin stretching across his face. I know that I finally will have the chance to release my restraints. So come, Jubi. With my own power, I will stand alone and fight you. Let me show you what I can really do. Naruto panted heavily, a streak of blood flowing from his forehead, but though he appeared distressed, his eyes did not show it as the phantasmal image of his draconian father roared behind him. Tusan. Give me strength. With those words, he took a horse stance and clapped his hands together harshly. H-R-A-H. His bestial roar rocked Extalia as the pillar of Dragonslayer magic increased in size and intensity. His form began to change before the eyes of all that were present. His skin hardened, becoming more durable and dense as they had truly become scales, the blue markings of acnologia decorating them. His hair no longer bore any remnants of its original color as the spiky tendrils of black and blue rustled in the winds. His nails became literal claws and talons, and his teeth became true dragon fangs. His upper back began to bulge and grow, ripping apart the remnants of his cloak and shirt until magic and flesh fused to become a pair of outstretched wings with a feathered appearance. The same occurred at his coccyx as a lengthy, serpentine tail sprouted forth swished behind him. His eyes snapped open and his eyes were now a pure, shining white just as it had been when he bore his dragon mentality. The universe seemed to silence itself as it witnessed the coming of fully realized power. It had taken years of blood, sweat and tears. Technologia had broken him and built him back up every time until he could summon the fully realized power of a dragon through will alone. With pride and power in his voice, he called out the spell's name. Dragon Fosu. And then all hell broke loose. Insert music. Fairy Tail released power. Gao. The Jubi unleashed a challenging roar to combat Naruto's own. It called upon the lightning from above to strike at its foe. However, Naruto simply raised his hand and the electrical energy became his, coursing through his body and fueling it. It swiped the air with its monstrous claws and massive tornadoes swirled to life. But the Apocalypse Dragonslayer countered by stretching out his wings and flapping them forcefully. Mokashiryu no Habataki. The wingbeat of the Apocalypse Dragon generated a storm of black and blue-colored winds with the force of a Category 5 hurricane. The two wind attacks collided and a mighty shockwave of wind ripped across Extalia, forcing a large area of the island to crumble. With a swipe of its mighty tails, the Jubi destroyed the result of their cataclysmic clash and charged towards Naruto, slashing at the Dragonslayer mage with its massive claws. Naruto narrowed his eyes and flapped his wings once more, but this time it was to propel him through the air. He quickly achieved Mach speeds, the sound barrier shattering as he flew towards the beast's massive palm. Mokashiryu no Kuroi Kiba. He raised his right arm and black and blue magic energy fashioned itself into the image of a dragon head with its fangs bared. He reared back the striking arm and with a sickening squelch, Naruto ripped through the Jubi's flesh and carried himself through its upper limb. The Jubi roared in pain, and that painful cry only increased in volume as its upper arm expanded and exploded into a mass of magic energy as the Apocalypse Dragonslayer burst out from the beast's shoulder, effectively blowing apart the limb. He then arched through the air, gaining altitude before going into a series of somersaults to build up momentum to then strike with his flesh and blood rear appendage. Mokashiryu no Shippo. Time seemed to slow down until the tail came crashing down upon the Jubi's skull. A visible ripple of force raced down the behemoth's body. A powerful shockwave emerged from the point of contact, and the mighty 10-tailed beast came crashing down into the earth of Extalia with crater-generating force. He's doing it, Fu said with a wide-eyed look. Her gaping mouth then shifted, slowly and unintentionally becoming a wide and toothy grin. He's fighting it. But how? Charles asked. We watched you all struggle against it. How is it that it's suddenly being torn apart before our very eyes? Doragon Fosu. Haku answered. What? Charles looked up at the Ice Dragonslayer in confusion. The ultimate power of a Dragonslayer, and the ultimate power within magic in general. Roshi said. A Dragonslayer normally gains this through excessive consumption of their element. But even then, it requires intense focus and concentration to bring it to the surface. Only a fully realized Dragonslayer can summon it at will. Roshi-sensei, but you're older and more experienced than Fujin-teme. Surely you would have learned to do it too, Natsu pointed out. The Lava Dragonslayer shook his head. I see your point, Natsu. But I haven't used Doragon Fosu in many years. I haven't seen the fields of combat since I was in my prime. That was back when Maki and I were still on good terms, so that should give you an idea of how long it's been. It's like a muscle, if you don't exercise it then it begins to atrophy over time, and calling out Doragon Fosu at will is something I am no longer capable of at this point in time. The son of Volcanus continued to stare in awe at the clash of power between the Jubi and Naruto as the beast slapped Naruto into the ground with its tails, only for the white-eyed Dragonslayer to quickly fly out of his personal crater and counter with a roar. The beam of energy had slammed into the Jubi's body and sent it skidding backwards, tearing a massive trench across the kingdom before being lost in the light of the resulting explosion that destroyed another portion of Extalia. To think I would live to see the day that another Dragonslayer could perform the act, Roshi muttered. Will it really be enough though? Juvia asked. Trust me, I fought a Dragonslayer who used Doragon Fosu not too long ago. Fu replied to Juvia. If drive mode allows us to wipe out mountains, Dragon Force can allow us to wipe out entire civilizations. At least, that's the description Papa Cyclonus told me. Damn. Gajeel made some power boost. Happy agreed with a nod. Happy. Natsu turned to his Exceed partner. We're going back in to fight. What? Happy exclaimed. Natsu you. Juvia agrees. The blue-eyed Dragonslayer nodded as she glanced at the three Exceed. As long as you are here, we can only do so much to protect you three. This battle is too high-scaled to try and fight it while also defending you from the backlash of our attacks is something Juvia does not think will be easy to do. Charles-san. I understand. Charles grabbed Happy and Shagget by their paws and summoned her wings. You guys better look after Wendy for me. Of course. Wendy-chan will be fine. Haku smiled as she placed a hand protectively on Wendy's shoulder. Charles looked at the Ice Dragonslayer with a stoic expression before nodding stiffly. She and the other two Exceed then flew off in the direction of one of the distant islands. The Dragonslayers watched them until they were nothing but specks in the distance. Alright, what's the plan because? Natsu's fists burst into flame. I'm all fired up. Naruto gritted his teeth as he was slammed into the ground by the Jubi's tail before being dragged through it. He quickly recovered as he rolled with the momentum and raised his arms and slammed them down, shattering the earth. Fissures spread across the land as a powerful streak of black and blue energy raced towards the Jubi, but the attack was brought to a halt as the beast countered with its fist, unleashing a streak of pure force that generated a massive explosion. The Jubi reared back its fist before aiming to strike at Naruto, but the ebony-scaled Dragonslayer quickly jumped over the attack and landed atop the beast's outstretched limb. The moment he did, he had already pushed off and arrived above the 10-tailed behemoth's head just as the beast began to charge a Bijudama. Like hell you're going to get away with that again, Naruto roared before rearing back his claws. Mokushiryu no Hakai Sume. He slammed the spell down in the Jubi's head just as it had prepared to fire, diverting the beast's head downwards. The spheroid of concentrated magic energy was launched, and the attack speared through Extalia once more, digging through its interior before punching through the floating island's base and vanishing through the clouds. The crimson eye glowed with rage and it snarled as the Apocalypse Dragonslayer, but Naruto was free to strike as he spun around and delivered a powerful roundhouse kick. Mokushiryu no Jinshinkyaku. The powerful seismic kick crashed against the Jubi's jaw, a powerful shockwave racing out from the point of impact before it was sent skidding backwards. However, the mighty 10 tails quickly managed to recover and slammed its tails down upon Naruto. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer crashed into the ground, cratering it from the impact. The Jubi roared and swung its arms, a raging tempest ripping a deep trench in Extalia's ground before it slammed into the ebony-haired son of Acnologia. The white-eyed Dragonslayer was carried skyward from the attack before another roar heralded the Jubi's follow-up strike. 5 bolts of lightning fell from above like the divine judgment of the dragons themselves, slamming into Naruto's body with explosive force. Electrical energy won't do much good against me, beast. Naruto snarled as he absorbed the voltage into his body, converting it into sustenance. He quickly inhaled, energy collecting within his gaping maw and condensing into an orb of black and blue. He swallowed the tight spheroid of magic, his body bloating slightly before unleashing it full force.
Mokushiryu no Hoko. The roar of the Apocalypse Dragon rocketed across the battleground, but the Jubi countered with its own burst of magic energy. A weaker form of the Bijudama, the Amari, clashed with the opposing spell. Black and blue pushed against red and white, both attacks fighting for dominance. The ground ruptured beneath the point of collision before disintegrating into dust as the two spells became unstable and generated a massive explosion. The dome of white heralded the creation of another massive crater upon the floating island of the Exceed. The two titanic combatants glared at one another through the rainstorm. Naruto flapped his wings, the magic of his draconian father cloaking his arms like flames as he prepared to charge once more. However, his ears twitched and both he and the Jubi turned their attention away from each other when the loud voice of a certain son of Ignil pierced through the stormy atmosphere.
You're hogging all the fun, Fujin Teme. Natsu inhaled deeply before unleashing a powerful tongue of blue and white flame at the Jubi's form. Karyu no Hoko. The attack struck true, nailing the beast in its face and thus its eye. With dragon fire effectively burning it, the Jubi was now, for those few precious minutes, in a literal blind rampage as it lashed out with its massive tails and claws. I assumed you all would remove yourselves from the battlefield once I entered this form, Naruto said as the other Dragonslayers landed in front of him. I'm doing this more for Sun to be honest, Roshi chuckled. Juvia and Gajeel-san have Fujin-san's back for this fight. Juvia nodded stiffly with a determined expression, while Gajeel merely shrugged his shoulders. And you're not going into battle without your cute sisters, Mei Wendy-chan? Hi. The youngest of the Dragonslayers nodded in agreement with Haku. We all have our own reasons for wanting to stay in this fight. However, Fu walked up to Naruto and planted a reassuring hand atop his black-scaled shoulder. We're not going to abandon you. Unfathomable power or not, you don't have to do anything alone, not anymore. Fu. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as he looked at the Wind Dragonslayer's smiling face. He shifted his gaze and looked at his fellow Dragonslayers as they grinned at him. You really are troublesome to me. Ha, you know you love me, you bastard. Fu pulled down the skin beneath her eye and stuck out her tongue before laughing. Now then. Let's kick that thing's ass. We promised Shaggy we'd get that thing off of her island, so let's do that. You all have a plan in mind already judging from your confidence. It was more of a statement than a question, and Fu nodded in confirmation. Naruto smirked, nodding in satisfaction. And that's why I trusted you for that mission with Han and Yugito, Wind Dragon. So, if we are going to carry out this plan of action, then you will need to recuperate your magic energy reserves. How exactly are we going to do that, Otuto? Haku asked. Fu and Wendy I could understand, what with the wind from the storm and all. Juvia has the rain too, but there's not exactly a glacier I can feed on. The The 7 other Dragonslayers watched as Naruto's magic energy outlined his body before it stretched out like arms. The arms of energy touched them on their foreheads. It was for barely even a moment, but the instant Naruto's magic made contact they suddenly felt a surge of power flow through their bodies. Their eyes were wide with amazement as they looked down at themselves, noting the blue and black auras that flickered around their forms like a raging fire. The amount of power which their bodies exhumed was unlike anything they had ever felt before in their lives. "There's so much power," Wendy commented. "I feel like..." Natsu clenched and unclenched his fists. "Like I can do anything. Even in drive mode, pure physical might allows us to shatter mountains and rip apart the earth." Naruto stated before turning to Fu and planted a hand atop her head. "Now show me what my second-in-command can do. I will follow your lead, Fu Taiko." Fu's eyes widened at the winged Dragonslayer, a small blush adorning her face as she took note of the recognition the man held for her in his eyes. However, her eyes narrowed in annoyance when the Jubi's roar ruined her moment. "Alright guys. Attack. Haku, insert music." Naruto Shippuden those who are in Kara's Extalia towards the Jubi before 2 long whips of ice coated her arms, almost looking a pair of dragon tails. The Jubi roared and unleashed its own tails at the Ice Dragonslayer. Hyoryu no Haraben, Haku lashed out with the twin tails of ice that her Tundra Whip spell allowed her to utilize, matching the Jubi's strikes blow for blow. One of the tails went to attack her from the side, but she leapt and cartwheeled in the air before twisting her body and lashing out with one her whips, matching the Jubi's second tail strike with enough force to halt it and generate a shockwave. She landed on the ground and crossed her arms in front of her chest before forcefully uncrossing them to crash her whips against another attack from the 10-tailed beast. She moved faster and hit harder than she had ever moved before in her life as with each strike, the brown-skinned monstrosity was quickly being covered in an ever-growing sheet of ice. "With Oto's magic, I feel like I can do anything." She let her giddiness free as she laughed while ducking and countering another attack from her bestial opponent. "Now let's try something a bit more high-scale. Hyoryu no Hyokugeki." Haku raised her arms in the air and the very atmosphere experienced a severe drop in temperature to the point that the black and white-haired Dragonslayer froze over almost the entire battleground. Frozen water particles then collected rapidly until massive icicles the size of the Jubi's own fist encircled it. With a roar, the ice drive user then clapped her hands together and the icicle crash spell responded, launching themselves through the air and stabbing themselves into the 500-foot behemoth. A powerful explosion of ice and frost then raced across the battlefield and the Jubi released a gurgling roar due to the fact that one of the icicles had speared through its throat. "And we're not done yet," Roshi announced as he and Juvia landed on either side of the Jubi. The 2 Dragonslayers took deep inhalations of air, magic collecting within their lungs as their chests became swollen. "Yoryu no Hoko, Suiryu no Hoko." The 2 powerful bursts of raging hot lava and swirling water respectively, crashed against the Jubi, washing over its frozen form. The lava burned its body and the smell of burning flesh permeated the air. However, Juvia's frigid water came into play as the lava was cooled. It solidified into a mass of black volcanic rock that restricted the monster's movements even further. But one noticeable feature of the 10-tailed beast's new prison was the fact that a long vein of molten lava ran along its midline. "Alright boys. Let I am have it," Roshi called out as he and Juvia leapt away. "You got it, sensei." Natsu turned to Gajeel. "You ready, Kurigane?" "That shouldn't even be a question, Salamander." The iron drive user grinned widely as his red eyes shone with a manic light. "Gee-hee-hee." The 2 then shot off from their positions, the ground cratering from the force at which they pushed off. "Arms. Vernier," Wendy called out. The bodies of both Iron and Fire Dragonslayers felt lighter and thus their speed increased, the friction their bodies making with the ground causing a streak of orange to mark their path as it turned to magma. They then skidded along the earth, rotating their bodies to build up momentum as they got into position. Their magic energies spiked simultaneously, an aura of blue and white flame encompassing Natsu while Gajeel had an aura of green magic around his body. "Metsuryu Ougi." Gajeel slammed his arms together as they morphed into a massive, wicked sword of black iron, while Natsu's flame aura increased in size and intensity. "Guren. Bakuenjin, Goma. Tetsu Jinkin. The Crimson Lotus. Exploding Flame Blade and Karma Demon." Iron God Sword merged together to create a powerful burning sword that glowed as if it had just been freshly forged from the furnace. Both secret Dragonslayer arts were swung upwards and crashed against the vein of lava on the Jubi's prison. With the power of both Wendy's supplementary spells along with Naruto's magic, the 2 attacks tore through the obsidian substance and crashed against the Jubi's body. However, the main point of striking the vein of lava came to light as the molten earth had become ignited from the Unison Raid spell the 2 fairy tale mages created. A massive explosion occurred and encompassed the Jubi's form in a storm of fire as the force of the explosion worked to raise Jubi off of the ground. But gravity had no time to act upon the beast as Fu appeared in a swirl of wind beneath it. Metsuryu Ougi. Ryuha Shipuugeki. Fu generated a massive burst of swirling winds which ripped the earth as it rose up in the form of a powerful hurricane-level wind circulation system. Merging with the flames of the explosion, the rapidly rising fire tornado carried the Jubi high into the air. The beast cleared the airspace of Extalia and smashed through 2 consecutive floating islands, turning them to floating piles of rubble with ease. Now, Fu cried out. Naruto took off through the air with a sonic boom as he flapped his wings. His body was a streak of black and blue as he raced after the Jubi's form. He appeared to the beast's left and spun his body around to deliver a powerful kick to the Jubi's spine. Mokashiryu no Zansho. The talons of the Apocalypse Dragon punched a massive hole in the Jubi's back before it was sent rocketing straight into another celestial body. That was the size of Earthland's moon. The impact shattered the spherical mass of floating Earth. But the Jubi continued through the air of Daedalus until a sonic boom occurred once more. Naruto, now on the behemoth's right, reared back his fist as magic energy blazed to life around his claws. Mokashiryu no Kahaya. The powerful devastation wave spell generated a massive wave of black and blue energy that tore through the Jubi's eye and out through the other side of its body. A shockwave echoed throughout the skies of Daedalus, and the 10-tailed beast once again broke through a moon-sized celestial body and came to a halt upon landing atop another floating island. Part of the island cracked and fell apart as the Jubi rolled across the landmass's surface, ripping up earth and foliage from the friction until it was able to stabilize itself and regain its bearings. The sound barrier shattered once more as Fu, Wendy and Natsu flew with the other Dragonslayers in tow to catch up to the 10-tailed beast. Yes, Fu whooped. My plan totally worked. We took the battle off of Extalia. See Haku, told ya it would work. Fu blinked in confusion as the daughter of Glacia wiped away tears. What's wrong? Why are you crying? It's nothing. It's just, he really has changed so much over these past few months. He never really fought alongside anyone before when he was younger, and now he's grown so much to the point that he's willing to trust others to lead him into battle. The Ice Dragonslayer stared at her little brother figure with a feeling of pride, but the moment was quickly brought to an end when said little brother figure called out to her. Haku ne-chan. Make it slip. Haku and Fu looked to see the Jubi climbing back to its feet, its body now regenerating from the consecutive strikes. They then shifted their heads, making eye contact with the Apocalypse Dragonslayer as he pointed to the Jubi's legs. The two women looked up at one another and shrugged. My post as Fu Taiko wouldn't have lasted much longer anyway. Well, Uto was never much of a follower to begin with. The two female Dragonslayers laughed lightly before Haku let herself fall from Fu's grip. She reared back her fist as icy magic energy flowed from her body. Hyoryu no Hyoketsu. She slammed onto the ground and crashed her fist against it, cratering it from the force of her landing. An ice-blue magic sea sprung to life beneath her and the Jubi. The black and white-haired daughter of Glacia unleashed a burst of ice from the magic seal. The ice drive augmented attack completely froze over MBS as well as the ground beneath it. With its ice still healing from Naruto's attack, its legs frozen in the ground now a relatively frictionless surface, the Jubi's attempt to move with its arms resulted in it slipping. With a roar, the Jubi fell forward with as much grace as a newly born foal trying to walk for the first time. Lava Dragon, melt the earth underneath it and drag it down. Up in the air, Wendy was holding the red-haired son of Volcanus. Despite the howling winds and booming thunder, the shout of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer did not fall on deaf ears. The blue-haired Dragonslayer gave a nod to the lava user as the veins of lava which flowed across his black scale-covered skin seemed to glow. As his magic energy was being channeled, Wendy climbed high into the air before going into a somersault to build up some momentum. Go Roshi-san. With as much strength as her drive mode-induced form could muster, she threw Roshi. Yoryu no. The lava Dragonslayer rocketed towards the Jubi's location like a fiery bullet as his arms changed from black to the bright orange-yellow that was commonly seen in lava. Magumakanba. Roshi slammed into the ground in front of the Jubi, his arms generating a temperature so intense that the earth melted immediately upon contact and dug through the crust of the unnamed island. Soon after, a wide surface area inclusive of the Jubi's current position took on a violent red glow. The redness intensified as the land beneath the Jubi quickly became molten magma. The Jubi roared in pain and moved to escape, but the lava proved to be very viscous and thus very difficult to maneuver through. The 500-foot-tall monster sunk deeper and deeper into the magma chamber spell, albeit slowly. Solidify the lava. Naruto ordered. Drip drip drop. The voice of Juvia acted as a herald for an even more violent rainstorm, steam rising as the heavy rains fell upon the burning land. Juvia thanks you for holding her for so long, Fu-san, but Juvia will take it from here. It's all yours. The mint-haired woman gave her fellow female Dragonslayer a smirk as she released her grip. Juvia nodded before the water drive user's body was converted entirely to water. The rain melded with her own body as she moved swiftly through the air, and Juvia reached out with her hydrokinetic abilities to the water on the ground below that formed from Haku's ice having melted from the heat of Roshi's lava, along with the rainwater that collected in large puddles from the Jubi's own rainstorm. More and more water joined with her body until the liquid body of Juvia had become a very large dragon. Juvia will cool the lava, but Juvia also wishes to deal damage. Blue eyes shone brightly as the water dragon roared violently, setting its eyes upon the lava-encased monster below it. The water dragon fell from the heavens before crashing down on the Jubi's neck, its sharp fangs of hard water biting into the ten-tail's flesh and forcing the massive behemoth to bend down at a painful angle. This also provided an additional effect of plunging the Jubi's face into the burning magma. Suiryu no Kobaku. Juvia's blue eyes shone as her magic energy flared. True to its name, the explosive bite of the water dragon had the serpentine water dragon bite down even harder before generating a massive explosion of frigid water that washed over the entire area of lava which Roshi had formed. The freezing waters cooled the lava, solidifying it into a thick, black mass of volcanic rock that bound the Jubi's limbs and tails in place. Juvia reformed beside Naruto and nodded. Juvia is done, Fujin-san. Naruto then made various hand motions and two massive violet magic seals formed, one above and one below the beast. Naruto held his hands at eye level, making sure the Jubi's body was in the space between his palms. Seal magic. Gravity. Naruto's magic energy emerged from the violet seals in numerous pulses, and the Jubi roared as the force of gravity increased 100 times over. The ground depressed, forcing it even deeper beneath the surface, and a massive cylindrical hole formed. You will fall. Naruto increased his output and the Jubi was forced down even further until it was practically a part of the island's geology from how deeply it had been embedded in the floating island's stone. Now roar. Those two words acted as a herald for the small band of Dragonslayers as they all took deep breaths. Karyu no. Tetsuryu no. Suiryu no. Tenryu no. Yoryu no. Hyoryu no. Furyu no. Mokashiryu no. The various elements gathered within the open jaws of their respective wielders. Their chests swelled, their magic spiked, and then they unleashed it all.
Hoku. Fire, iron, water, sky, lava, ice, wind and energy all descended upon the Jubi. The elements were separate at first, but they twisted around each other to form one massive beam of destructive power. The Jubi's red eye widened as it gazed upon the oncoming attack. Roar. There was a moment of silence. A moment of calm in the middle of the raging tempest that the Jubi's existence had created, and then there was a flash of white light. The Jubi's roar was pushed down, the earth beneath it cracking severely as the crater it lay in began to succumb to the pressure of the 8 elemental roars. The solidified lava that bound it had shattered, but the force of the attack kept the Jubi subdued, flattening its body out and forcing it down even deeper. The Jubi's roar loud, but the deafening explosion that occurred easily drowned it out. A rapidly expanding pillar of white energy tore through the island's landscape before it punched straight through the depths of the floating landmass. The Jubi roared in agony as the various elements attacked its body. Slicing winds, burning flames, boiling lava, raging waters, shredding iron, freezing ice and intense energy all bombarded the monster, forcing the 10-tailed beast further and further down until it finally fell through the island and the clouds beneath it. Royal Palace. Daedalus. If one were to observe a particular floating island from below, they would see a spiderweb of cracks with rays of white light poking through its base. The island then broke apart and it was as if the heavens had dealt judgment as the pillar of white descended all the way down, punching through the clouds. Urza Uzumaki Namikaze witnessed that very sight, her head's angle adjusting with the descent of the pillar of magic until it finally collided with the landscape of Daedalus's floating island. There was a flash of white that mimicked that of a star's. And then the blast occurred. The earth and the heavens shook from the explosive impact, and a massive and mighty dome of white energy expanded outwards from the point of contact with the resulting shockwave tearing through even the capital city of Daedalus itself and reaching through to the royal palace and beyond. Urza gritted her teeth and her hair whipped wildly. What the hell is this? She muttered to herself. She gripped onto Caliburn's hilt as tightly as she could. But even then, she was still sent skidding backwards and thus tore another scar in the royal palace's gardens. She turned her head to the side to avoid the pieces of debris from getting into her eyes until finally it came to end. The Titania of Fairy Tail coughed to rid her throat of the dust that had managed to sneak its way down her airways before looking back in the direction of where the pillar of light had fallen. She looked at the massive mushroom cloud in the distance as it climbed high into the storm clouds that suddenly began to spread from Extalia and down to Daedalus's territory. What is that? The daughter of 2 wizard saints asked. I don't have any idea either, but judging that it fell down from where Flame Brain was going, it's bound to be something troublesome. Urza's ears perked up,
her eyes widening as she turned to see the image of one Grey Fullbuster and one Lucy Heartfilia as they were getting off the back of a horse made of iceng to her feet and embracing the black-haired Godslayer and blonde celestial spirit mage tightly. "Good to see you're safe, Urza." Lucy smiled. "You too, Grey, Lucy." She replied before stepping back and gave her younger guildmates a once more. The redhead frowned deeply as she looked Grey over, taking note of the wounds and burns on various parts of his body. Lucy wasn't as heavily damaged, but she expected that since the last she had seen of the blonde, she had stayed out of the battles. Little did she know of her blonde guildmate's part in the fight against the version 2 forms of Edo Yugito and Edo Han, but that was a story for another time. "You'll be coming back home with scars." "Maybe," the ice make user shrugged. "That pink-haired hag will find some way to get rid of them anyway, so I won't beat up about them too much." "Is that really a way you should be addressing the guild's only healing mage?" Lucy deadpanned. Grey shrugged before turning back to the redhead. "Besides you're one to talk." He gestured to her own form, clad in blood, bruises and broken armor. "Though I guess I would expect one of the few people to put you in such a state would have to be yourself." Urza rolled her eyes and lightly punched him in the shoulder. "You idiot. Natsu's worse. He would never be able to find you, even with that nose of his." "That's up for debate." She chuckled before gaining a confused expression. "Actually, now that you brought it up, how did you know to come here to find me?" "I didn't, but I knew you went to battle your doppelganger here, so I just took a chance and hoped you would still be somewhere around here." The black-haired mage smirked. "Good to know my luck still hasn't failed me, and as that luck would have it, we picked up a straggler." Grey gestured behind him where his ice horse had been standing and Urza looked over, her eyes widening as she saw who Grey's riding companion was. "Jell I mean. Mistogen," she quickly corrected herself, making animated motions to express her surprise. "What are you? How are you? When did you? Where have you been?" "When we got separated through the anima, I had actually been trying to locate you all. However, when Dorma Anam the Dragon Knight had been awakened and the members of the Shiroikage had been turned into beasts from the Nine's powers, I needed to act swiftly. I acted as quickly as I could and urged as many people to get to safety. Hopefully, they heeded my warnings and listened to me as the prince of this kingdom. After that, I noticed there was a battle taking place here at the palace. Only a mage of fairy tale could cause the amount of destruction to a national landmark, even if it is not a landmark of their own world." Urza, Lucy, Grey and Mistogen both chuckled at the joking jab made at their guild. "You make a fair point, Mistogen." The redhead's expression then became serious once more as she looked at her blue-haired nakama. "On a more serious note though, well, I'm not even going to ask you about the prince thing, but the Dragon Knight. It's some giant robotic dragon," Grey explained. "You saw it too?" the wielder of Caliburn shouted. "Not just saw it." Grey scowled. "Natsu and I fought it, but that thing proved pretty strong as it took out those 2 demonic Shiroikage members without even doing anything. It literally just sucked the magic right out of their bodies and killed them in the process. We tried to tag along when it flew off, but I didn't get a good grip and fell off before it reached that floating island up in the sky. Hopefully Matchstick isn't banged up too bad. I pray for Natsu's safety as well." Mistogen nodded in confirmation. He then pointed in the direction of the growing storm, thunder booming and lightning flashing as it began to gain momentum. However, it appears that something even worse has arrived. Dorma Anam has great power and abilities, but not even it has the ability to generate magically induced storms. The 4 mages of fairy tale were suddenly distracted from the sight of the slowly dissipating mushroom cloud as the ground behind them had burst apart, revealing a giant hand made of wood. The 2 S-class mages were both wide-eyed and their mouths agape as another hand accompanied the first. The giant hands of wood then dug their fingers into the dirt and worked to free the mighty wooden titan that lay beneath the depths. The Mokujin reared its head and Hashirama panted slightly, wiping the sweat from his brow as he finally managed to free himself from the underground laboratory. "That took longer than I thought." The armor-clad Exceed blinked owlishly when he suddenly found the tip of a platinum flame-encased sword being pointed at his face. "Who are you? Are you the one who unleashed Dorma Anam?" Urza asked. Hashirama's eyes widened before narrowing dangerously, his wooden giant's eyes glowing in a menacing fashion. "How do you know about that?" "From him." Grey tilted his head to the right and Hashirama gained a confused expression as he looked between the 2 Earthland natives. He then shifted his gaze and his black eyes widened in shock as he found himself staring into the obsidian orbs of the Crown Prince of Edalis. "Oh, Oji-sama?" "Oji-sama?" The 3 other fairy tale mages turned to Mistogen with wide eyes and slackened jaws, but the blue-haired member of Edalisian royalty ignored their reactions as he gave a soft look towards the red-armored Exceed. You're alive, Hashirama. It's been quite a long time, hasn't it?" The counterpart of Jel-El smiled at the brown and black-furred Exceed. The Mokuton user climbed to his feet and being in his humanoid form, he was able to look down at Mistogen's shorter visage. The anthropomorphic Exceed raised a clawed hand and lightly held the blue-haired man's face. Tears formed in his eyes and the synthetically forged Exceed felt as if a lump had formed in his throat. With a toothy smile of both relief and joy, Hashirama rested his forehead against the shorter male's own. Oji-sama, I am so very happy to see you. You were but a child when you went missing. We all, the entire kingdom, thought you died. It warms my heart, it truly does. To see that you have been alive all this time and have managed to grow up to look so strong and tall, I'm sure the king would be proud to see what a splendid young man you have become. The tears of joy then became ones of sadness as the red armored Exceed's thought caught up with his mouth. He gritted his teeth and he stepped away from the S-class mage, his hands falling away from Mr. face as he clenched them into tight fists. Hashirama, Oji-sama. I apologize for my current attitude, but while I am elated to see you. Hashirama swallowed the lump in his throat. It's your father. I'm sorry to say this, but he's lost his mind, Oji-sama. He's no longer the man who was a kind king, nor was he the man who practically raised me after my creation. I know, Hashirama. Mr. said as he patted him on the head. However, it appears that something much worse than Dorma Anum has arrived. We don't know what it is, but if the kingdom has any chance of surviving, we must move quickly to stop it. Hashirama wiped his eyes and looked in the direction Mr. pointed in. With a wave of his hand and pulse of magic, the ground beneath the 4 magic users was no longer scorched earth and upturned soil as it had suddenly been replaced by wood. The wooden surface rose high into the air, becoming a tower that was as tall as one of the castle's towers and thus allowed them to get a better view of the dissipating mushroom cloud beyond the walls. The amount of magic energy located at that point. I see what you mean when you say we should move quickly, Oji-sama. The humanoid Exceed narrowed his eyes, using his vastly superior feline vision to zoom in as he took note of a massive shadowy figure within the cloud. The cloud then dispersed with a swish of 10 mighty tails and Hashirama's eyes widened. No. Hashirama? Mr. looked at the armor-clad fellies. That thing? Do you know what it is? All thoughts and words were silenced as the Jubi's thunderous roar echoed across Edelus once more. The shockwave traversed the lands and the gale force winds it generated made the 3 magic users skid backwards slightly despite the distance between them and the 10-tailed beast. If man won't kill God, the devil will do it. Hashirama quoted the last words he had heard from King Faust before pointing a finger at the Jubi. That would be the devil. The Grey, Lucy and Urza were all confused and fearful as they felt the killing intent and intense pressure of magical energy from the one-eyed monster. The devil? The Jubi opened its mouth and Hashirama's eyes widened even further as he caught sight of the violet-black orb that began to take shape within its jaws. And that would be trouble. Oji-sama, take these 2 and get to safety. What are you going to do? Mr. asked. I don't know what that thing is, but I know the Bijudama when I see it. You don't plan to fight that behemoth, do you? If you plan to fight, we'll help you. Gray cracked his knuckles. If that thing has demon powers, we can. No, Hashirama's voice was firm. Listen, I appreciate your willingness to assist, but that monster out there. That's the Jubi. It is a combination of all the 9's powers. The 4 fairy tale mages had their eyes wide at that statement. What? But Hashirama, if that is the case, what makes you think you can handle it? Mr. gripped the armored Exceed by his bicep tightly. The Jubi is primordial magic, you'll die. I was bred to be the antithesis of the 9 themselves, given the abilities of Mokuton in order to combat them effectively. I may not be sure of what my capabilities are since I will be going up against a combination of the 9's powers within a single body, but I have to try, not just to protect the kingdom. But now I have to protect you as well, Oji-sama. If fighting to the death is what it takes for that to be done, then I will gladly give up my life for the sake of your life and the kingdom's. No, Mr. reached out to stop the armored Exceed, but his cry fell on deaf ears as the Mokuton user quickly hopped into the air and spread his wings. Era! The brown and black furred Exceed zoomed through the air, leaving the 3 fairy tale mages behind. Damn it! Mr. gritted his teeth and fell to his knees, clenching his shaking fists tightly. Urza, Lucy and Gray watched their nakama in silence, deep frowns appearing on their faces as they could only observe as the S-class mage repeatedly released his frustrations out on the wooden surface with his punches. Wait! Gray's eyes widened in realization as he turned to Urza. How are we getting down from up here? Urza turned to her guild mate and her face twisted into one that undoubtedly told the ice manipulator, you cannot be fucking serious? Unfortunately, the 17-year-old mage was unable to translate that and stared blankly at the brown-eyed S-class. What? You idiot! She sighed. Insert music. Fate, 0 The battle is to the strong. Outskirts, Edelus Hashirama had quickly crossed over the walls that separated the royal capital from the rest of the surrounding wastelands, but the scientifically created Exceed knew that if he didn't act quickly, the kingdom would most likely end up looking exactly like said wastelands. He quickly flew in an upward arc and crashed down on the ground as he undid his era magic. The moment he came into contact with the cracked earth, he had planted his hands on the ground and unleashed his magic. Mokuton. Mokujin, the wood giant spell sprung to life as said giant rose from the bowels of the earth. A wooden dragon wrapped securely around its torso. The glowing yellow eyes of the wooden creation glared at the Jubi, but the Jubi took no heed of it as it just finished charging the powerful spell in its jaws. Groar. The tailed beast bomb rocketed out of its humanoid jaws, the velocity of the attack actually tearing a trench in the ground several feet beneath it. "You will not destroy my home," Hashirama roared. The Mokujin raised its hands and the dragon around its body opened its jaws, orbs of golden yellow magic energy rapidly being charged. The moment they reached maximum input, they were fired. They crashed against the tailed beast bomb, but the larger attack easily overwhelmed Hashirama's feeble attempt at a counter and so it continued on its current path. However, before the attack could even come close to impacting with the royal capital, the Mokujin had run forward and thrust its arms forward. The massive spheroid of violet black collided with its palms, but to the surprise of its creator, the Mokujin was quickly being pushed backwards. Its feet dug massive trenches in the already cracked earth and Hashirama gritted his teeth as he worked to keep his creation intact. "This spell," he thought, "it's way more powerful than anything the Nine had created when we fought in Earthland. Just how strong is this thing?" He took note that they were actually growing dangerously close to the royal capital and so he had his wood giant dig its fingertips into the orb of compressed magic, while also having the dragon snake its way around the orb as bite down on it in an attempt to reduce the amount of magic energy in the attack. Mokuton. Mokujoheki. Behind the wood giant, several large arches of wood erupted out of the ground and interlocked with each other. The posterior half of the dome-shaped wood-locking wall spell boasted incredible sturdiness as it held back the wood giant and the tailed beast bomb from moving back any further. Hashirama quickly spread his wings and the humanoid exceed took off into the skies while clapping his hands together. With a pulse of magic, wood-locking wall's anterior half was forged to trap the Bijudama inside with the Mokujin. A few moments later, the sound of the Bijudama detonating resonated from within the dome-shaped wood prison. The brown wood turned into a glowing red and yellow from the intense heat of the magic-made blast it fought to contain and Hashirama clenched his teeth tightly, his nose dripping with blood from the mental strain it took to hold the defensive structure together. His obsidian orbs widened as he spied a massive crack forming across the wood dome. "No," he growled out through gritted teeth. "Come on, you stupid spell. Stay together." He gritted his teeth and had sweat pouring from his brow, but despite his best efforts, the artificially created exceed could not withstand the might of the Jubi's attack. The fear of the dragons was placed in his heart as he watched the wood wall expand in size and begin to blacken from the intense heat. The lengthy cracks branched out like a spiderweb, rays of orange light pouring through as said cracks widened. The explosion tore through its confines and the dome of orange energy and light expanded outwards at a rapid pace, tearing Edelus's outskirts asunder. Hashirama could only watch from above as the blast radius continued to grow, almost with the intent of destroying anything and everything in its path, and the walls of Edilus would not be spared. Requip. Adamantine armor. Hyojin Meiku. H. Yuga. True to the spell's name, a massive glacier crafted entirely of black ice burst forth from the barren earth as if it were called upon by a mighty being. Its length and height was almost as great as the protective walls of Edilus themselves, and its thickness was equivalent to that of an actual glacier's. The glacier spell's frontal surface then gained a green magic seal and the wall of identically colored energy stretched out across its entire surface. The blast wave of the Bijudama smashed against the two-layered defense. The obsidian-colored glacier cracked heavily despite the protective layer of magic over its surface with large portions of it breaking off and smashing to the ground. However, the momentum of the explosion had been slowed down and the blast wave died away. Edilus had been saved from as it lay on the edge of a deep and wide crater. "Looks like that flight armor of yours can move pretty damn fast. We got here just in time," Gray commented as Hashirama flew down towards the glacier and landed atop its surface in front of the fairy tale mages. "I thought I told you two to stay with Oji-sama. I believe the words you're looking for are, 'You're welcome,'" Gray grumbled as he folded his arms in front of his chest. Lucy flicked the black-haired ice make user in the forehead causing the mage to flinch in pain. "I'm sorry." Hashirama sighed. "I'm grateful for you both having done this to protect the kingdom, but this is the responsibility of the warriors of Edilus. You three are outsiders, Earthland natives at that. This does not have to be your concern. We know what you said, Hashirama-san, but as mages we cannot stand idly by while innocent lives are threatened." Urza said. "Maisagan said he did what he could to try and evacuate the citizens of the kingdom, but you can't be sure if they all heeded his warnings. So we will fight with you, whether you like it or not. We Earthland folk are stubborn like that." Gray chuckled as he planted his left fist in his right palm. Black frost flowed from his body as his magic spiked. "Now let's get to some fighting. Urza, given the size of that thing, there's only one thing I can think of that would even make us do some sort of damage to it. What do you say?" Lucy tilted her head cutely, the confusion in her brown eyes being paramount as she looked at her two nakama, Right behind you, Gray. Urza smirked as her body shone with the light of her requip magic. Requip. Lightning Empress armor. The armor was a mix of gold and light blue with Urza's appearance resembling that of an armored Hellenic goddess of sword. The breastplate was decorated by golden trimmings, and had thin plates going up to surround Urza's neck. The similarly adorned pauldrons were composed of 2 plates one over the other, with the top ones each sporting a prominent protrusion. Similar protrusions, although less prominent, were present on the armored gauntlets which covered the entirety of Urza's arms.
The greaves, on the other hand, possessed matching protrusions on them, with a particularly large pair adorning the knee guards, but were instead composed of plates attached to simple, thigh-high boots with high heels. Rather than having a waistguard, the armor had a decorated cloth hanging down from the breastplate to cover Urza's groin, sporting a single piece on the top front and 3 on the back, which were decorated by large spheres with fur-like ornaments hanging from them. To complete her look, Urza's head had a band with 2 ribbons on it, and her hair was styled in a long braid. Hyojin Maiku. Mori, with a tap of his foot, a lance erupted from the glacier's surface in front of Urza. Oh my. Lucy commented. The lance was massive, almost as if it would have been forged for Makarov to use in his Titan form, as it bore a length of over 15 meters and was as thick as the aforementioned guild master's muscles when in said Titan form. The lance is made of ice godslayer magic, so it's stronger and tougher than steel, and since it's made of ice, it should be able to conduct your lightning well enough for this to work. It will. We blew up that old town when we were exterminating those giant monsters a few years back, but it worked. The only reason we stopped using it was because of how much energy it took out of us and because Master banned us from using it. Urza's body was then cloaked in golden voltage as she used her impressive physical strength to lift the lance. We're far stronger and better at using our magic than we were all those years ago. Plus, it'll be fun. She dug her heels into the ice and used her armor's ability over electricity to generate a positive current that flowed along her right arm, into the ice spear and back down her left arm as a negative charge. The flow of electrical current moved faster and faster, building up with a resounding humming sound. Hashirama-san, please buy us some time. 5 minutes at the most. Urza said as she kept her focus on the brown-skinned behemoth before them. I'm putting my trust in you too. Don't let me down, the humanoid Exceed exclaimed as he leapt off of the glacier. Mokutan. Shin Susenju. The ground burst apart as the 400-foot-tall Buddha of wood emerged from the depths of Daedalus, its 1,000 arms ready for battle as its creator landed atop its head. The massive titan of wood then charged across the battlefield towards the Jubi. The beast roared in defiance against the Exceed's charge as it summoned forth bolts of lightning from above. The Buddha unleashed its arms and served to protect both itself and its creator from harm. But those arms were no longer viable as a powerful shockwave of electrical energy sent the wooden giant skidding backwards. Taking advantage of the momentary pause in its opponent's charge, the Jubi lashed out with its tails and slammed them against the Shin Susenju's side. The dense wood cracked from the force, decorating the battleground with splinters. Hashirama growled from atop the head of his creation before channeling his magic into the Buddha's arms. The arms took on a life of their own and they lengthened and twisted, stretching high above the Jubi's body. The palms of the hands all glowed with golden magic energy and the Jubi was soon faced with 1,000 orbs of destructive force. This is what I had in store for the 9 back on Earthland, Jubi. Let me show you what forcing my hand feels like, Hashirama roared and unleashed the bombardment of energy blasts at the 10-tailed beast. The red-eyed behemoth roared and lashed out with its tails and batted aside wave after wave of the orbs. They arced through the skies before forming domes of destruction in the distance as they crashed down in random areas across the battlefield. The Jubi then opened its jaws and fired off the Amari. The skies were alight with the explosive collisions between the spheroids of magic energy and shockwaves generated powerful windstorms that served to break apart the nearby rock formations and mountainous regions of Daedalus's wasteland outskirts. The Jubi continued to try and combat Hashirama's storm of attacks, however, the numbers began to overwhelm the Jubi and soon it was encompassed in the numerous flashes and smoke clouds that came from the detonating energy blasts. Gruar. Impossible. Hashirama could only stare in shock as the one-eyed behemoth had shrugged off his bombardment like it was nothing. The Jubi was not a primordial beast for style after all. It charged through the resulting smoke cloud, the earth shaking with each of its steps, before shoulder-tackling the Shin Susenju. The wooden titan's chest caved inwards and then massive clawed hands lashed out and tore through numerous amounts of the Shin Susenju's arms. The wooden limbs fell to the ground only to be crushed beneath the literal heels of the Jubi as the beast continued to push back the Mokutan user. The Jubi performed a pair of palm strikes, but the Shin Susenju quickly raised its arms and interlocked its fingers with the Jubi's in an effort to hold back the crimson-eyed beast. With a 100-foot height advantage and a significant difference in physical might, the ground cratered beneath its feet as the Shin Susenju struggled against the Jubi's strength. Mokutan.
Inakai Takaru no Mikoto, from the several hundred arms of the senju, mighty wooden dragons were forged. Their glowing yellow eyes zeroed in on their target and they roared as they struck forth, biting down on the brown-skinned beast's flesh. In addition to that, the wooden reptiles acted to drain the magic energy that fueled the jubi's body as they feasted from its limbs and throat. The jubi roared in annoyance, releasing hashirama and the senju from its grasp to tear off the wooden dragons. It reared back its head, stretching the majority of the wooden dragons to their limits such that they were and grabbed the ones that attacked its arms and held them by their throats to crash them against one another, reducing them to splinters in its massive hands. It finally opened its maw and unleashed a powerful blast of magic energy. The beam of crimson tore a scar in the earth and incinerated the wood dragons that bit down on its legs before disintegrating them into dust from the resulting explosion. Mokuton. Kongoken, Hashirama caught his bearings and he quickly allowed his Buddha's body to detach itself from the wall of hands it had been bound to. With the weight of the several hundred hands no longer attached to it, the senju moved with surprising agility. Its fists were alight with golden magic energy as it performed a powerful straight jab. A shockwave raced out from the point of impact against the jubi's chest, but the beast countered with a swift right hook that nailed the wooden Buddha against its cheek. Its head snapped to the left, but Hashirama had his creation spin with the momentum and regain its footing to be able to duck under the swipe from the ten tails. With a golden magic-coated fist, the senju delivered a powerful left hook before bending its body at the knees, the ground cracking as it pushed upward through its knees to perform the strong uppercut that loosened the jubi's teeth. Mokuton. Mokuryumir. The Buddha slammed its hands down on the ground and the wood dragon herd spell activated. The already cracked earth ruptured as 20 massive wooden reptiles sprung forth and snaked their way around the jubi's limbs, biting down on its arms, tails and throat. The 10-tailed beast climbed onto its hind legs and stretched up to the heavens, tearing at the yellow-eyed dragons with obvious rage. Hashirama. We're ready, so get out of the way. Luce's voice reached the artificial Exceed's ears and the Mokuton user turned around to see what it was exactly he had been stalling for the two fairy tale mages to do. His coal-colored eyes widened as he caught sight of the bright golden glow that cloaked the giant spear of ice Urza had been clutching. The lightning generated had a maximum current of 2.25 million amperes of current and 1 million volts which were utilized to generate a powerful electromagnetic field. Waves of electrical energy pulsated from the obsidian spear of ice as Urza's eyes narrowed at the jubi, preparing to take aim at her target. By the dragons! The armored Exceed muttered to himself as he gazed upon their weapon. So he did as the brown-eyed girl had said. He got the hell out of the way. Unison raid. Railgun. She took a strong step forward, the ice cracking from her action, and her muscles bulged before she unleashed the burst of lightning to propel the ice spear forward. The sound barrier was immediately shattered 5 times over as the spear of divine ice rocketed through the air at a speed of approximately Mach 6. The jubi, for all its power, would never have been able to dodge or block the attack even if it wanted to. The railgun projectile slammed into the jubi with terrific force. A powerful shockwave of lightning occurred to cause immense pain to the beast. The ground ruptured from the electrical shockwave and a powerful dome of magic energy and lightning exploded outwards and turned a massive area of wasteland into a smoldering crater. The resulting mushroom cloud rose into the air, the sparks of voltage making it almost seem as if it were a thundercloud. Do you think we got it? The celestial spirit mage asked. Urza panted as she fell on her hands and knees, gasping for breath. I hope so, because that was all I had left in me. Unknown Island. Edalus, we sought to move away from Extalia so that you wouldn't be caught up on the battle. Naruto's eye twitched as he looked at the 3 Exceed before him and his fellow Dragonslayers. And yet you and the 2 other Exceed still left Extalia to come here. Dragonslayers are powerful, I know that well. But to think you actually accomplished a feat as great as fighting the jubi with such ease. Naruto's eye twitched even more as Shagget practically ignored his words. If it were possible, I may even go so far to say you might be able to kill it. Unfortunately, as I informed all of you earlier, it is an effort and futility to try and kill it. Juvia hummed and thought as she took in Shagget's words. Shagget-san. You mentioned those 2 mages who defeated the jubi. Hagoromo and Hamura Otsutsuki, yes. Well, from your story, Juvia has come to think that even sealed away, the jubi was still a collective consciousness. So Juvia is curious. How did the 9 come about? Juvia asked. The 9 were crafted when Hagoromo, who had sealed the jubi's entire magical essence away into his own body, removed the jubi's magic from his body and split it apart. Shagget explained. The proxy of the 9 narrowed her eyes as she looked up at the water Dragonslayer. Where are you trying to get at? Juvia thinks that if the jubi was split apart once before, then Juvia can assume that it can be done again. The daughter of Levia nodded her head. Yes. Juvia understands and Juvia believes it can be done. You can't be serious, Charles and Shagget shouted. The 2 Exceed looked at each other. But Charles was the one to continue the dialogue as she looked into the blue eyes of the wielder of water. Dragonslayer or not, the destructive power of that thing brought an imbalance to an entire parallel world. Were you not listening when she said that it took days to bring it down? You need to be far more powerful than you already are. Not to mention that even if the skill was possible, the act of separating magic energies of such immense proportions requires an immense understanding of magic energy and Eternano on a whole. You would literally need to have the ability to control the very essence of magic itself, and as my daughter so eloquently put it, you do need a higher level of power. Shaggott's eyes widened, her ears twitching as she caught the sound of Agnologia's Dragonslayer chuckling. You find this funny, Dragonslayer? I assure you that this is no laughing matter. The fate of my entire dimension is at stake and yet you choose to laugh? Have you lost your mind? Naruto's amusement remained present on his face as he rose back to his feet. I do choose to laugh, though not out insanity. It is rather due to the fact that I perfectly fit the criteria that is necessary to handle the Jubi. Fujin, I know you're strong. Very strong. There is no doubt about that. Roshi said. However, even you should realize that to fight an immortal being composed of magic is well beyond your capabilities. Not unless your element happens to be. Roshi paused as something in his mind clicked and his eyes widened. No Dragonslayers have had some capabilities of eating elements outside of the one which they use, but I thought you had simply just mastered the craft to an extreme extent. Roshi-sensei, what's going on? The son of Igneal looked at his teacher in confusion alongside the other Dragonslayers. What's the deal with the Fujin that it's got you looking so surprised? Energy. Things clicked together within Shaggott's mind, flabbergasted being written all across her face. You're no ordinary Dragonslayer. You're a divine Dragonslayer. A child raised by one of the divine who govern one of the four elements that govern the universe in its entirety. The others looked at the Doragon Fosu wielder in amazement and shock, though Natsu scratched his head and thought. Wait, but your spells are always Apocalypse Dragon attacks. Though it doesn't make sense that Apocalypse would be an actual element now that I think about it. An unofficial title because my dragon parents' power. Naruto answered. Energy Dragonslayer would be my official title. There was a period of silence from the younger Dragonslayers as the information had to be processed. Whoa. Whoa indeed. Roshi said. It actually makes a bit more sense as to why your abilities are so great, even by Dragonslayer than you, and thus I've had more experience with being a Dragonslayer. But the sheer amounts of raw magic and physical power you possess. It all makes sense now. Is a divine really that strong? Natsu asked with a nervous chuckle. The divine govern the universe itself. They literally are what makes the worlds go round, Shaggot answered. Oh, that is correct. Naruto nodded in confirmation to both Roshi's and Shaggott's words. My dragon parent is one of the four divine dragons who govern over the universe and controls energy itself. So, Oni-san. Wendy paused. Does that mean? Fu tapped her chin in thought. You can. Gajeel gave Naruto a once-over as the gears turned in his mind. Eat the Jubi, Fujin-san. Juvia finished the question on all their minds. Their expectant expressions were all quickly replaced with complete and utter disappointment when the son of Agnologia shook his head. I can eat energy, but there is a limit to even what I can ingest. To try and literally eat the beast itself is impossible, but that is not our aim. I had originally thought I would be capable of doing this, but Water Dragon's epiphany serves to make my strategy far more worthy of attempting than before. Naruto raised a clawed hand. I will take hold of the Jubi's very essence and then. He clenched his hand into a tight fist. Take it and break it apart to reform Kurama and the others. And how exactly will you do that? Gajeel asked. Dragonslayer magic. Naruto's eyes shone a bit brighter as he spoke those two words. The magic that allows a mage to be gifted with the ability to shatter dragon scales, break dragon bones and tear through dragon entrails. The dragons are the ultimate beings of the universe, and as their children, we are the representation of their very might as we utilize the skills they taught us. The levels of power are at our maximum when we achieve our highest form, when our true potential is unlocked. But you've activated Doragon Fosu, Fujin-san. Juvia frowned as she could not wrap her head around what the divine Dragonslayer was saying. You're at the height of what we can do as Dragonslayers. Yes, that is true, Water Dragon. However, what you all witnessed was still a restrained form of what we are capable of as Dragonslayers. Naruto clapped his hands together. His white eyes shone brightly, his magic energy spiked in a pillar of black and blue piercing the stormy skies. All eyes then widened as Naruto's body suddenly began to grow and the sound of bones and musculature being rearranged met their ears. It is time that you witness the power of a fully realized Dragonslayer. Outskirts. Daedalus, there was a seemingly awkward silence following the powerful blow as both fairy tale mages and Hashirama stared intently at the cloud. The dust settled and the Jubi stood as tall as it always was. It was still for what seemed like an eternity, its red eye wide with what seemed to be shock. It then slowly tilted its head back into position and stared down at Urza, Gray, Hashirama and his wooden Buddha. Its crimson eye glowed with rage and its body unleashed a wave of magic energy with a roar. No time to dodge. Gotta block. The black and brown furred exceed had his Buddha raise its arms just as the Jubi spun and lashed out with all 10 of its tails. The Shin Senju flew through the air like a ragdoll before it came crashing down and tore a massive scar in the wastelands of Edalis only to come a halt as he smashed straight into Gray's glacier, making a deep indentation. Hashirama-san. Are you alright, Hashirama-san? Lucy called out to the red armor-wearing exceed, but her words fell on deaf ears due to the ringing he was hearing. Hashirama groaned as he climbed back to his feet. The world was spinning and he was seeing double, though the sudden concentration of Eternano he felt was a very good way to put things back into focus for him. He glanced up in time to see the Jubi charging up its Bijudama. The culmination of positive and negative Eternano was far more intimidating when the background was decorated with raging tornadoes and falling lightning bolts that ruined the landscape. Hashirama could only widen his eyes as he said the first 2 words that came to his mind. Oh shit. He raised his hands up in a feeble form of defense as the sphere was unleashed, tearing the ground apart as a projectile of unparalleled destruction. Gray and Urza fired off projectiles of black ice and platinum fire respectively, but not even the spells of an ice goddess and the flames that could kill a dragon were capable of reducing its momentum. Mokashiryu no Hakai Tsume. A massive streak of black and blue stretched across the cataclysmic atmosphere at unbelievable speeds, and a resounding sonic boom echoed across Edalis as the streak took on the image of a massive black beast. Its white eyes shone with power as it unleashed a devastating roar, slamming into the Bijudama and generating a powerful shockwave that rocked the heavens and the earth. Its massive claws dug into the spheroid of energy and its fangs bit into the orb of magic. Streams of Eternano flowed into the beast's maw and the Bijudama steadily shrank in size. The force behind the attack was still present though as the new arrival's heels dug into the ground, forming deep imprints, but the force gradually decreased until finally the tailed beast bomb was at a size small enough for the black and blue scaled beast to easily tear it in two. Both halves of the powerful spell were sent rocketing across the landscape before they detonated. Even at only 50%, the spell was capable of generating a yield of over 50 megatons as revealed by how the mountain ranges were literally reduced to nothing and the shockwaves from the bright explosions were still felt from the location of the royal city. When the shockwaves died down, Urza, Gray and Hashirama all dropped their arms from their faces, having used them to shield themselves from the blast waves, and looked up at their savior. Impossible. Hashirama gazed in shock at the beast. But how? Gray muttered as he fell to his knees. Urza's brown eyes drank in the sight of the dragon, her ears listening to the sound of its deep breaths and her senses taking in the feeling of power radiating off of its body. The Jubi exhumed power and ferociousness as well, but that power of primal and felt as if it were an unstoppable force of nature. The dragon held an air of authority and commanded respect through its aura of power, something that one would expect to feel when they would stand before a deity, and to the red-haired fairy tale mage it was something which felt oddly familiar. You have fought well, Titania. The dragon's voice was deep, but seemed as though it were mixed in with that of another. Her brown eyes widened when it clicked within her mind. Oni. Sama, insert music. Creator's layers. Now, Jubi. Naruto dropped down onto all fours. The aura of black and blue cloaked his reptilian body as his white eyes shone with power. Give me back Kurama. Naruto dug his claws into the earth and spread his wings out as far as they could go before he charged forth. The ground caved inwards, becoming a massive crater where he had once been standing, and he gave a mighty flap of his wings to increase his speed. Mokashiryu no. He reared back his arm and clenched his claws into a tight fist. Black and blue magic energy flared to life around the limb before morphing into the shape of a dragon's head with its fangs bared. Kuroi Kiba. HRAAAH. Naruto let his fist fly as the Jubi raised its forelimbs in an X-shaped manner to block. The blow connected and a powerful shockwave raced out from the point of contact, the ground cracking heavily beneath them. The Jubi skidded backwards slightly, but Naruto was unrelenting in his assault as he followed after the 10 tails. Mokashiryu no Hakai Sume. His claws blazed with energy before he slashed against the Jubi's face. The force of the strike had the beast's head snapping to the side before it facing the opposite direction. Mokashiryu no Shippo. Naruto then struck out with his tail, stabbing the rear appendage deep into the Jubi's eye before violently ripping it out by shifting it to the so that a massive slash would stretch across the Jubi's face. Once the tail was free, it snaked its way around the Jubi's throat. However, due to the sheer size of the red-eyed monster, Naruto's tail never made it around the complete circumference of the Jubi's neck, but he quickly adjusted as he stabbed his tail into its flesh and then flapped his wings to fly downwards. Through sheer physical might, Naruto brought the mighty monster down to ground zero, tearing the earth asunder from its impact. He wrenched his tail free and spun around, lashing out with his hind legs. Mokashiryu no Zansho. The decapitating talon spell tore through the Jubi's body, further damaging its fallen form before Naruto stood upon his hind legs and lashed out with a strong upward kick to the Jubi's chin. Mokashiryu no Jinshinkyaku. Powerful shockwaves formed from the two powerful kicks. Naruto's talons tearing through the Jubi's downed form had its upper body rising above ground level before he spun on his heel and performed a straight kick. The strike nailed the Jubi against its mouth, shattering numerous teeth with a resounding shockwave. Time seemed to slow down for the Jubi until the force registered with its body and the Titan of Magic was sent skidding away to form a massive trench in the earth. Mokashiryu no Hoko. The powerful beam of ebony and sapphire destruction tore a trench in the earth as Naruto fired it at his opponent. A flash of the two colors of his magic shone like a star as the beam of pure Eternano slammed into the Jubi's body and unleashed a cataclysmic explosion. The dome of destruction tore a large area of the Edelesian wasteland asunder with its accompanying shockwave. Massive gashes stretched across the wasteland like tree branches with rays of blue and black poking through as the energy attack even damaged the underlying layers of earth. The explosion died down, but the Jubi's roar was quick to signal its return to the fight. Naruto roared in defiance before he slammed his claws down on the ground. Mokashiryu no Kahaya. The streak of energy tore a massive gash in the battlefield, racing straight towards the Jubi, but the 10 tails countered with an Amari. The two energy attacks clashed and caused a devastating explosion that completely rearranged the cartography of the area. Naruto's white eyes saw through the resulting smoke cloud like it wasn't even there as his opponent began lashing out with its tails. The rear appendages aimed to slam against Naruto's form, but the son of Agnologia quickly dodged the first strike before he broke out into a run. The tails quickly followed after him, creating massive scars in the landscape with each missed opportunity to crush the Dragonslayer beneath them. Naruto then hopped into the air and flapped his wings, going into a barrel roll to avoid the latest strike in the series of the Jubi's attacks. The beast narrowed its crimson eye before opening its mouth. The Amari was quick to come into existence before it was fired. Naruto gritted his teeth as the attack detonated in the air just as he was about to attempt to absorb the energy. The Doragon Fosu user's world was a swirl of color as he was sent tumbling through the air. He managed to regain his bearings just as another Amari was launched, and so he flapped his wings and climbed high into the air to avoid the explosion. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer was given no chance to rest though, as the Jubi continued to fire the bursts of demonic magic energy at him in rapid succession. It has gained some form of intelligence. It's launching unstable energy attacks that would explode before I even get a chance to absorb them.
The dark sky was alight with massive crimson explosions. Floating islands and whatever forms of life that lived on those islands were not spared the wrath and destructive forces of the Jubi as they were effectively annihilated. Naruto's sixth sense for danger forced him to turn around as he saw the remnants of those islands beginning to succumb to gravity, massive pieces of stone, some of which far exceed his own size, beginning to descend like a falling meteor shower.
With a powerful flap of his wings, Naruto flew through the meteor shower until he got above the entirety of the falling stones. He let the Jubi gaze upon his form as he revealed the full length of his wingspan. Mokashiryu no Habataki. His magic energy sprung to life and he flapped his wings. A powerful wave of apocalyptic energy ripped through Edelis's atmosphere and collided with the falling pieces of stone and caused their speed of descent to increase. The island remnants neared the Jubi, but the sentient power of the Nine merely opened its jaws and arched its 10 tails over its head. Grooar. The Bijudama was fired as a destructive beam and the Jubi tilted its head to the side as it destroyed every single piece of island that would have fallen towards it. The powerful explosions dotted the skies and Naruto had to fold his scaled wings over his body due to a very close proximity explosion. The son of Agnologia rolled with the momentum and went into a free fall towards the Jubi. Amaris were launched once more, but Naruto's aerial maneuverability allowed him to easily avoid the attacks and he even batted one aside as he spun in the air, slapping it with his thick tail. He continued his descent towards the Jubi and held out his claws as magic energy swirled to life and condensed into a massive, tight spheroid of shining blue and black. Energy Make. Cho Odama Rasengan, Naruto roared as he brought down his spell. The Jubi raised its tails, arching them over its head to defend, and the mighty orb of rotating magic ground against the Jubi's flesh. The force of the attack ripped through the Jubi's body, cratering the ground beneath its feet while a powerful shockwave raced out across the battleground turned nearby rock formations into dust. The Jubi roared and pushed back against its smaller foe. Naruto snarled as the tails followed after him, going into a series of aerial evasive actions. He performed every trick in the book and then some, but one of the tails managed to clip him on the left wing to knock him off balance. Two more tails then followed after him, twisting around each other in a double helix to wrap themselves around his torso and slam him into the ground with devastating force. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer released a gasp of pain as the force of the slam had him laying within his own personal crater, but as he moved to climb back to his feet, his white eyes widened when the massive shadow of the Jubi's hand encompassed his form. Fast, The Apocalypse Dragonslayer quickly smashed his claws down into the earth to gain an anchor in order to push himself back to his feet. With a roar, Naruto raised his arms skyward and stabbed his tail into the ground, his claws digging into the Jubi's palm as the massive limb smashed down on top of him. The ground ruptured, cratering beneath his talons. His legs shook as he resisted the Jubi's downward force, but he pushed the assaulting limb back with an impressive show of strength. The Jubi's eye widened at that, only for Naruto to suddenly take off between the Jubi's limbs to get behind it. He lashed onto several of the Jubi's tails, gripping them tightly. Naruto's muscles bulged beneath his scales before he used ever once of physical strength he had to lift the Jubi off of the ground. The behemoth's roar of surprise was practically euphoric for the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. The son of Agnologia then swung the beast overhead and earth met sky for the beast until it was sent crashing into the land of Edelus, tearing the earth asunder from its impact. "I'm not done yet," Naruto exclaimed as his draconian body was cloaked in a flare of ebony magic that made him appear as if he were a living shadow. Metsuryu Ougi J. Naruto took off and flapped his wings with as much force as he could muster before slamming into the Jubi's body. He dug his claws into the Jubi's eye and the force of his momentum carried both him and his opponent across the battlefield. Boulders, cliffs, mountains, they were removed from existence as they did little to halt the path of destruction Naruto's secret Dragonslayer art unleashed. Finally, Naruto raised his opponent high into the air before slamming it down into the ground, much harder than he had done before. The Moonless Sky Annihilation spell generated a massive explosion of black and blue energy that was about the size of 2 entire mountains. The shockwave that accompanied it raced out from the point of impact, tearing apart anything and everything it came into contact with. The resulting massive mushroom cloud climbed into the sky, temporarily obscuring the combatants from view. The Jubi growled as it lay within the massive crater, Naruto's forelimbs embedded into its chest down to the elbow. Now, the Apocalypse Dragonslayer roared as he injected a burst of magic energy into the beast. His eyes shone brilliantly as he called upon his powers over the divine element of energy. He dug into the Jubi's magical body and grabbed hold of its very essence. With a flap of his wings, Naruto flew back into the sky and a massive thread of glowing black and blue magic energy was pulled out from the Jubi's chest. He pulled, the flow of magic energy coming to him with ease, and he provided the traction needed to draw out the Jubi's essence for his own. "Your magic is mi." Naruto's eyes widened and he came to a sudden halt in his efforts. The Jubi growled as it planted its hands on the ground, climbing back to its feet. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer felt a powerful amount of resistance coming from the Jubi, and the 10-tailed beast roared in defiance. The thread of energy suddenly began to bleed crimson, turning a very dark shadow of violet until the crimson color completely took over the thread. G-A-H. The scream of pain from the Apocalypse Dragonslayer was like hearing the sound of a tortured soul from the pits of hell itself. The demonic energy was filled with hatred, anger, rage. Every single negative emotion that could be found in a dictionary bore down on Naruto's very being. It burned terribly, completely taking over any thought Naruto was thinking and replacing it with pure agony. With his connection to the Jubi severed, the brown-skinned monstrosity returned to a stable stance. It raised 2 massive tails and slammed them down on the draconian combatant, cratering the earth from his impact. The black and blue-scaled dragon was forced deeper into the Edelesian battleground as the Jubi's massive hand came afterwards and crashed down upon him. For all his power and the ultimate skill of dragonification to increase his size to 150 feet, 250 if he were to stand with just his hind limbs, the Jubi's 500-foot stature still provided a significant advantage against him. He struggled beneath the massive limb that held him in place, but the primordial beast provided the necessary pressure to keep him down. Geiyao! The Jubi's monstrous roar rocked the battleground as it charged up a Bijudama. Naruto quickly moved to absorb the magic energy from the spell, but the Jubi's input far exceeded the rate of Naruto's absorption. It was smaller than what it should have been due to Naruto's efforts, but the orb of violet black had been completed. Said orb suddenly morphed in shape, turning into a sharp cone. However, the 10-tailed beast did not direct the attack at Naruto, instead it turned its head skyward. "What the?" Naruto whispered. He could only watch as the Jubi fired at Extalia, the physical form of annihilation streaking through the air like a ballistic missile before it collided with the island of the Exceed. His white eyes were wide with shock as he watched the triangular-shaped explosion pierce the clouds to reveal a portion of the starry night sky that had been hidden within the cataclysmic atmosphere. The transformed Dragonslayer looked back at the Jubi and a shining white meeting evil crimson. The son of 2 wizard saints couldn't help but notice a shine of what seemed to be satisfaction within that Tomo-patterned orb. "Bastard!" The 10-tailed beast took no heed to the insult as it released a low growl. It charging up another cone-shaped Bijudama, this one aimed for the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. Mokuton. Kongoken. The earth exploded as a massive, glowing fist of wood emerged from beneath the jubi and crashed against its chin. The Bijudama was fired prematurely and the unstable blast of magic went on to blow a massive hole in one of the floating celestial bodies above. The jubi then released a roar of surprise as it felt a strong pull on its tails. It turned its head and its crimson eye widened as it spied a familiar thousand-handed Buddha. "Oi, didn't your mother ever tell not to cause the end of the world?" Hashirama then willed the Shinsu Senju to pull harder. The jubi lost its contact with the ground as it was hurled overhead. Earth met sky for the mighty behemoth of primordial magic before it was thrown through the air. "What are you doing here?" Naruto growled. "Saving your life," Hashirama replied as he held out a hand to help Naruto to his feet. The dragon snarled and batted the wooden limb aside with his tail before climbing back onto all fours. "What purpose does saving my life have to do with your agenda?" "Well, other than saving the entirety of my home dimension and everyone in it as well as trying to make up for kind of causing this entire mess since I kidnapped the 9. Your friends told me you can stop the jubi and split them back into the 9. "You did this? You took the 9? Naruto exclaimed. "And what friends? I don't have any." Naruto paused in his dialogue as he saw multiple figures move past him and Hashirama. Roshi was the first to strike as he leapt into the air and crashed his fist down on the ground. The earth turned red hot as a stream of lava moved across the battlefield towards the still airborne jubi. Yoryu no Bakuhatsu. The ground turned a brighter shade of crimson mixed with yellow and orange before a geyser of lava encompassed the beast, burning its flesh and eliciting a roar of agony from it. Karyu no Hoko, Tenryu no Hoko, Furyu no Hoko. The raging firestorm traversed the air, slamming into the jubi with devastating force and sent it flying back several meters. The 10-tailed beast then crashed into the side of a cliff before massive orbs of solid water and spikes of ice swirled to life from the atmosphere. Suiryu no Suirou, Hyoryu no Hyochuugeki. The orbs of water accumulated around the jubi, merging with one another to form the dome of water that was the water prison spell. It completely enveloped the 500-foot-tall behemoth, bubbles flowing from its maw as the water flowed into its lungs and replaced the air within it. True to its name, the icicle crash spell crashed into the water prison, instantly freezing it over and imprisoning the beast inside for however long it would last. What are you doing here?" Naruto snarled. "This is not a fight you all can handle at this stage." "Ah, when you say it like that it sounds like you actually care," Fu said as she flew over to the transformed Dragonslayer. Note the sarcasm. She then gave her superior a very intense glare. "Besides, I gave you a whole speech about not doing things alone back up there on that island, and what do? You go in alone. Now is not the time for such stupid arguments, Wind Dragon." Naruto's massive eyes shone with rage. But the orange-eyed wielder of the winds did not back down. "I am your leader. Insert music. One Piece Luffy's fierce attack. Then lead me." Naruto's eyes widened at the calm response. What? Lead? You think we can't do it, but if that is what you believe then give us directions. Show your worth as a divine Dragonslayer that wields power above all of us who want to help you fight. Roshi, Juvia, myself, Wendy, Haku. Hell, even Natsu and Gajeel in their own way. We all want to help the 9. You may be the only capable of doing what has to be done to separate them from the jubi, but we're Dragonslayers, goddammit. Like hell are we gonna let our prides be overshadowed by yours and have us leave a battle unfinished? Fu stretched out her hand and tapped her fist against the dragon's snout. "We're Nakama now, whether you like it or not." "Nah, Kama?" The miniature Agnologia uttered the word almost as if it were completely foreign to him. "Gee hee hee. That's right, dumbass." Gajeel bore a fanged grin. "We're staying in the fight. We still have some leftover magic that you lent us." Natsu's blue and white flames sprung to life around his fists. "I'm all fired up to let the rest of it out. Plus, we got ourselves a little fan club going on and they can't wait to see their heroes kick ass." Roshi jabbed a thumb at the massive glacier that Gray had formed. The black-scaled dragon stared into the distance and caught sight of the small army's worth of Exceed all lined up, their cheers of encouragement from atop the obsidian structures trying very hard to superimpose the winds of the storm. Even Queen Shagget herself was making an effort. "They're alive. Yeah, we managed to evacuate them after you transformed and went to fight. Good thing too because damn. We'd literally have the Exceed on an endangered species list." Natsu chuckled. "Now then, Fujin Taicho." Haku spoke each syllable with a cute smile on her face, knowing just how much it would annoy her surrogate Otuto. "What's the plan?" Naruto looked over the small group of drive mode users with an indifferent expression. The glow in his eyes seemed to dim slightly as he sighed, dragging a hand down his face. "You stubborn idiots. Fine, I will lead you, but you listen exactly to what I tell you to do. No deviating from them, Fire Dragon, Iron Dragon." "Oi, why are you telling us specifically?" the 2 fairy tale mages exclaimed. "Because you're the biggest idiots of them all," he replied curtly. He then turned his head to Fu and his eyes shone as he looked to his second in command. Wind Dragon. As the one I can trust most on the field of battle. I will pass on this plan of attack to you. Provided that we survive this, you do exactly as instructed, understood? Fu nodded her head. I understand. Good. Mokashiryu no Baikugan. Naruto's eyes glowed and the Wind Dragonslayer's pupils suddenly dilated as a suddenly influx of information entered her brain. She groaned, holding her head from the headache that came with the battle plan. Are you sure this will work? It's the only thing to do, Wind Dragon. He turned away as the atmosphere suddenly became charged with the primordial magic of the Jubi.
Lightning fell from the heavens and cracked the dense ground, while tornadoes shifted haphazardly and gave birth to great trenches. The dome of ice that bound the Jubi shattered as if it were made of glass as its tail stretched outwards. The massive crimson eye glowed with power and the Jubi roared and more elemental phenomenon began to occur around it.
Exceed. Hashirama. The Exceed informed the Dragonslayer of his name. Shield them. The Jubi is going to unleash enough energy to level your entire kingdom at least 3 times over. And what will you do to stop that? Counter it with my own attack. Will it be enough? Hashirama questioned. Let it be known to you that to underestimate my might is to underestimate the might of a dragon, Hashirama. He replied before turning back to the Jubi. Now, shield. Mokuton. Mokujoheki. Hashirama sat his 400-foot Buddha down behind the Apocalypse Dragonslayer as he scooped up the other Dragonslayers. The wood-locking wall spell sprung to life, though there was a small slot which had enough space for its occupants to bear witness to the scene outside. Insert music. Fairy Tale Dragon King. Naruto nodded in satisfaction with the defensive structure before he flew up into the air. He tucked in his wings and limbs, closing his eyes in tight focus as he hung in the air like an orb of ebony. Energy was drawn in from all sources. Lightning which fell from above made very sharp turns in the air and the winds shifted in their courses as they all made their way towards Naruto. The amount of energy continued to climb, reaching a level that Naruto had never unveiled to any being other than Kurama and Aknologia. His magic flared to life and the phantasm of Aknologia himself appeared behind the son of 2 wizard saints as the Jubi roared, its own energy input reaching its maximum. The Jubi then unleashed its roar as the forces of nature were unleashed. A combination of magnitude 10 earthquakes, a literal rainstorm of lightning bolts mixed in with rampaging tornadoes and other wind circulation systems crashed down upon the land of Edelus. It tore the wasteland apart, and despite the amount of distance between itself and the kingdom of Edelus, they all felt the shockwaves from the accumulation of so many magically induced natural phenomena. The land was torn asunder from all the devastation, with the Jubi itself acting as its epicenter. All of these concurrent events then resulted in a cataclysmic explosion that yielded over 1,000 megatons of destructive force. Vanished to extinction, he uttered before his eyes snapped open. He uncurled himself, stretching out his limbs, wings and tail and unleashed numerous, powerful bursts of magic energy from his body. The bursts of magic energy hung in the air like stars of obsidian and sapphire and were as innumerable as the stars in the void. The Dragonslayers sat with Hashirama in a circle within the palms of the 400-foot-tall Buddha, listening intently to the instructions Fu had received from Naruto. A hum of thought came from the son of Volcanus after allowing the information to digest. And you're sure this plan of his will work? Roshi asked. Fu's orange eyes met Roshi's coal-colored ones with unwavering determination. It's the only thing we've got and since he's literally our only shot at saving Chome and the rest of the 9, I say it will be worth it. Well, as much as I hate the bastard, he does know what he's doing in a fight. Natsu said. If the Jubi weren't literally immortal then honestly, I think we killed that thing 3 times already with his plans. I say we give it a shot. I don't really think we have much of a choice in the matter at this point, Salamander. Gajeel piped in. I mean, it's either that or certain death at the hands of a giant monster thing from another dimension and personally, I like being alive.
Wendy nodded in agreement. We'll do our parts, Fu-san. Fu nodded in thanks before turning to Hashirama. And what about you, Hashirama?
I will do what I must for the sake of my kingdom and to right the wrongs of my king, Hashirama replied. I will aid you in this endeavor. What is that? Juvia asked as she looked towards the small rectangle of wood at the head of the wooden Buddha. Hashirama helped them find their answer as he had the Buddha raise them up a bit higher to place them in front of the slot. All eyes widened as they gazed upon the Apocalypse Dragonslayer in all his glory. Such power. Roshi and Haku commented, Go Oni-san, go. Wendy cheered for her older brother figure. So this is what a fully realized Dragonslayer can do? Natsu asked as he turned to Fu. You seem to have been with him the longest. Did you know he could do all this? I always imagined what a Dragonslayer could do at their maximum from the stories Papa Cyclonus used to tell me. The green-haired Dragonslayer replied to her fire-using counterpart. But never in all my years would I have ever thought a Dragonslayer, divine or not, could perform feats like this. He said his dragon parent raised him with the intent of being the strongest and I always thought that despite his strength, He was just being his usual overconfident self. But Gajeel ushered for her to continue. But Fu gulped with a nervous smile on her face. Now, I can only say that after seeing this, there is no contest. This man is the strongest Dragonslayer in the world. Metsuryu Ougi. Haku Fuheneikoudan. Naruto's eyes shone like miniature dwarf stars and roared like the beast he had become. With a flap of his mighty wings, Naruto unleashed the full force of his spell. The suspended orbs of energy followed the direction of his wings and rained down destruction upon the world of Daedalus like a meteor storm. Secret Dragonslayer Art. Cataclysmic Eternal Flare Bomb. The most powerful spell in my entire arsenal. Time slowed down from Naruto's perspective. The transformed Dragonslayer looked onwards as his spell moved to collide with the Jubi's ultimate attack, the Tenpenchi. I had planned to save this spell for when I would fight alongside Tusan against the Dragon King. But it seems that the only way to defeat the Jubi is with no holds barred. Gaze upon my true power, Jubi, and I. The two attacks collided and a bright flash of white light seemed to encompass all of Daedalus, hiding it from view. The world fell into silence as an orb crimson raced out from the point of collision. The crimson then turned into a bright rainbow of colors before turning into a blue mixed with black. The orb of magic energy could no longer remain intact as the colliding energies destabilized.
The heavens shook as a powerful explosion of white light ensured, and Daedalus itself bore witness to the unbelievable devastation that could only be brought about by the collision between two combatants of this magnitude. Lances of energy stretched out of the explosion's blast radius as if it were forged of lightning. Entire mountains were blasted apart, the earth was once again forced to endure abuse as it was ripped asunder by random energy bursts, roaring fires raged across the landscape as the pure intensity of the energy bursts ignited the flammable elements deep within the earth, and the wind whipped wildly, kicking up a raging dust cloud as a massive shockwave ripped across practically the entirety of Daedalus.
In the end, a massive vortex stood at the epicenter of all the destruction as the explosion died down, lightning lancing across its circumference. The world fell into a deafening silence as they could only stare in amazement at the end result. Hashirama's wood-locking wall had endured only so much and had to resort to using the Shinsu Senju itself to protect himself and his new comrades in arms. The wooden Buddha had been reduced to a hunk of blackened wood and ash, but it had done its job to defend the Dragonslayers and its creator from harm. By the dragons, Fu whispered. Remind me never to fight him again, Natsu said as he turned to Gajeel. Only if you do the same for me. We have an accord. The two 17-year-olds bumped fists in agreement. They continued to watch in silence, the sound of rumbling thunder being the only thing they could hear. Though, their ears all twitched as they picked up on the thunder as it was starting to get louder. And had no sort of timing behind it. Usually, thunder followed the strikes of lightning by approximately 10 seconds, but these sounds. That's not thunder. Haku voiced all their thoughts and they all watched as the black and blue blur that was Naruto, flying through the air and crashing into the ground. He rolled with his momentum, climbing back to his feet and dug his claws into the ground to tear small scars in it until he came to a halt before the small group. The son of Agnologia panted heavily as he had a large tether of black and blue energy connected to his chest, though large streams of crimson bled into the tether every now and then. Oni-san. Wendy cried out with joy at seeing the mighty dragon that was her surrogate brother. Fu, have you relayed the plans? Yeah, Fu replied. Good. Then it is time to act, Naruto ordered as the ground rumbled. The Jubi charged out of the vortex towards the small group and Naruto immediately spread out his wings. Seal magic. Chains. The golden chains of his mother launched themselves out of his joints and from his wings, their rattling echoing across the battlefield. They quickly snaked their way around the Jubi's limbs before the large spikes at the end impaled themselves through various parts of the Jubi's body and then into the ground to keep the beast in place. Seal magic. Gravity. The force of gravity increased 20 times over. The Jubi's might proved to be intact however as it did not succumb to the downward forces like the earth beneath its feet did, said earth caving inwards. However, its tails were still proving to be quite troublesome as they refused to remain bound by the chains and resisted the increased gravity. Looks like I'm up, Hashirama shouted as he eyed the tails. He slammed his hands on the ground and massive trees grew out of the desolate and destroyed wasteland. The trees then began to take a more solid shape around the Jubi's tails, looking very much like large torii gates made of redwood. Once the torii gates had been constructed, Hashirama sent a pulse of magic through the wooden constructs and forced them deep to the ground to hold the tails in place. Mokuton. Myojinman, the gate of the great god spell did its job to bind the tails while also acting to drain the Jubi's chakra, though that particular act was an effort in futility due to the near infinite power of the beast. Alright, it's held in place by my seals. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden friend, energy make, Cho Odama Rasengan. Naruto roared and energy burst forth of his body, rotating and condensing into the massive orbs of glowing blue eternano. I'm entrusting a Rasengan to each of you. Use it to push the Jubi back and help me pull out its essence. The drive mode users all hopped atop Naruto's wings and reached out towards their respect spheres. The moment they touched them, they received the similar cloak of black and blue energy around their bodies from when Naruto initially lent them his magic on Extalia. C-C can. Can we do this? Wendy stuttered. You can, SkyDragon. Naruto's booming voice spoke with a fire of determination. You all can.
Well, if you put that much faith in us, Otudo, how can we say no?
Haku smirked as she held her Rasengan high. The others followed suit and leapt off of Naruto's wings, rearing their arms back as they neared the Jubi. The 7 Dragonslayers released a battle cry in unison and slammed the massive orbs of Eternano against the Jubi's face. The moment they made contact, Naruto unleashed a pulse of magic from each of the 7 spheres, his magic injecting itself into the Jubi, and the Rasengans all lengthened and became thinner, turning into threads of Naruto's magic and the Jubi's essence. Now grab it, he cried out. Hi! The Dragonslayers all latched onto the tethers as they fell back to the ground, the magic Naruto had given them resonating with the original tether and the essence of the Jubi. The 8 Dragonslayers pulled at the Jubi and they all watched as a phantasmal image of the Jubi seemed to be separating from its body. They gritted their teeth as they felt the crimson negative force of the Jubi pulling at their bodies, trying to draw them into the Jubi itself. There's too much, Wendy muttered. We've come too far to lose now, Gajeel roared as he turned to the daughter of Grandine. Now stop being pussies and pull like you mean it, Natsu exclaimed as the literal flames of his determination blazed to life. You heard, I am, charge, the familiar voice of Fairy Tail's resident Exceed echoed through the air and Natsu looked up, his eyes bugging out of his head. Happy, what are you doing? We're helping out, Matchstick. Yeah Natsu, as if we'd let you do things without us, we're a team remember? Gray, Lucy? The Fire Dragonslayer looked to his guildmates as they were dropped off by Happy. The 3 then all grabbed onto Natsu's tether and began tosin. Wendy was caught off guard as well as her own Exceed partner helped her with her own tether. Like I'd let you do something like this by yourself. Charl rolled her eyes as she grabbed onto the Sky Dragonslayer's tether. You're my partner after all. Charl-san. Wendy grinned and suddenly her grip found new strength. Onisama. Urza was rested atop her brother's shoulder by Queen Shagget herself and the 2 females looked up at him with determined gazes. Let us help.
Naruto glanced away from the Jubi, staring at them with an almost uncomfortable silence. He then nodded and the 2 females were granted branching tethers of magic energy from the original one connected to Naruto's chest. Other Exceed, civilians and royal officials alike all dove down and grabbed onto the various tethers and began to flap their wings. The cries of the Exceed were like thunder as they all latched onto the magic energy of the Jubi, their own magic energy signatures resonating with it. The crimson negativity within the tethers was quickly overwhelmed as more and more hands joined onto the tethers to pull until the tethers were half red and half blackish blue. After all that happened and the destruction the battles brought about, the fate of an entire dimension was to be settled by a literal tug-of-war. On my mark. Naruto roared as he dug his claws into the dirt. Set. Their grips tightened and Naruto shifted his quadrupedal body backwards. P-U-U-U-U-U-U-L-L-L-L-L-L W-O-O-H. The small army of Exceed and the Earthlandian mages all pulled at the tethers with as much force as they could muster. Despite the Jubi not being able to shift its own body, the willpower it possessed to resist the pull of the tethers was astounding. It roared in defiance, its crimson eyes shining as its Eternano was being shifted in and out of its body. The Exceed's wings flapped as hard as they could and the mages of Earthland dug their heels into the dirt, all of them pulling as hard as they possibly could with as much will and determination as they could muster. The 9 are inside that beast and we, as their creations, need to save them. Shagat's voice echoed across the battlefield. She looked to her subjects, continuing to pull while doing so. They gave his life and so we must repay them with our own if we have to. As the Exceed, our magic is the magic of the 9. We resonate all with the Eternano of the Jubi on a level that not even the Dragonslayers who are fighting to free the 9 can. We may be small and lack the strength and magical capabilities of the Dragonslayers from Earthland, but even as we are, we can all help. We can be a power that can change the course of this world and save it. Now my Exceed. With all your strength, with all your heart, fight on. With those words, adrenaline and determination flooded their beings. Not just the Exceed, but even the mages of Earthland were roused by the encouraging, motivational words of the Exceed monarch. They pulled and they pulled. The Jubi's magic self drew further and further out of its body, and then, with one final tug, there came a bright flash of white. The pulse of magic traversed the land of Edalus and sent them all flying back. They rolled across the ground before friction brought them to a halt. Naruto panted heavily, his energy spent and thus his control over the dragonification was brought to end, reverting him back to his base form as a human. The blonde Dragonslayer lay amongst his fellow Dragonslayers and a few scattered Exceed, and they all watched as the white light died away.
Roshi smirked, Fu teared up, and Naruto himself couldn't help but react to the scene before him, bearing a wide-fanged grin as he looked upon the forms of the nine. The Exceed, the members of Fairy Tail and the mages of Earthland who had never seen a full-grown Biju Exceed all stared in awe at the sight. Bright blue eyes shifted upwards to stare into the bright crimson ones of his partner. "I got you back," Naruto said. "Mangy fox." The nine-tailed fox smiled toothily. "For all the crap I had to deal with traveling with you, you deserve having to go through all this shit to get me back." "Oh fuck you." Naruto smirked as Kurama brought a giant fist towards him, and proceeded to bump his diminutive one against it. "I'm, honestly, glad to have you back. It's good to be back, brat. Thank you, all of you, for saving us," Yuki said as he bowed his head slightly. "So to express our gratitude, we will finish up." "You're tired now," Chome stated as she watched her mint-haired partner try to climb back to her feet. "Rest, and we'll take care of the Jubi's shell." "I'll take you up on that." Roshi laughed as he lay back on the ground. "I don't think I can move anymore." "You're just lazy, Roshi," Sun muttered as he sweat dropped. Though, all pleasantries were brought to an end. True to the Nanabi's word, the Jubi, free from its binds, stood tall and strong once more. It was far smaller though, shrinking down to a height of 300 feet due to the loss of the majority of its magical power. The 10-tailed beast roared like a manic beast, lacking the control it seemed to have had prior to the Nine's extraction as it began to haphazardly attack the already devastated battlefield with the simple intention of destruction. "So Oni-sama." Natabi's flames seemed to burn a bit bright as she looked upon the Jubi. "Hagoromo Gigi's not around for this fight. How will we be beating this thing?" "It is magic like us. It will not die, no matter what happens to it," Isobu said with a slightly fearful tone. "Then we seal it, duh," Shukaku stated, "just like Gigi did with the original Jubi." "So that means we have to use Hagoromo Gigi's seal," Seiken stated. "Kurama, you remember the seal?" Kakuo asked. "I remember." He nodded to his five-tailed brother as he and his siblings continued to stare down the rampaging Jubi. "I made the mistake of holding back, believing in Hagoromo Gigi's dream for peace with humans." Kurama directed an intense glare at the beast as his magic energy continued to rise as flame-like magic energy rose from his body. "That thing is not human. So this time, no holding back. Insert music." Naruto Shippuden Uchiha Itachi, Kurama clapped his forepaws together as if in prayer and his magic energy spiked. Crimson flames enveloped his body, but then the flames began to shift in color and intensity. Kurama's fur became a bright golden yellow with an orange outline. Black circular markings were present on the kitsune's shoulders, stomach and on the front and backs of his paws. Black lines also ran across the posterior side of the kitsune's arms, the anterior side of his legs, and there was also a long black line which ran down his back, this line having short horizontal lines running perpendicularly through it to give the appearance of vertebrae somewhat, and branched off to run along the length of his 9 tails. 3 horizontal black bars ran along each of Kurama's cheeks, giving him the appearance of having thick whiskers tattooed onto his face. His eyes were no longer crimson and instead became a bright orange-yellow with a cross-shaped pupil. Rikudo Senin Moto. Kurama then dropped down onto all fours and gained a confident smirk as he glanced to his siblings. "Now let's go wild." Osu. The 9 charged, their massive forms thundering across Edelus towards the Jubi as it moved forward to meet them head-on. The 9 then split apart and Shukaku aimed the first strike. "Matabi, get in position. You don't need to tell me, Shukaku." Matabi hissed like the feline she was as she readied her massive paw of blazing blue and black flames. Suna no Kaiwan. The monstrous sand arm spell activated as his magic energy allowed his already massive arm to expand in size. The Ichibi no Tanuki let his punch fly and the powerful punch sent the Jubi rolling backwards towards his older, feline sibling. Daibyo Sugeki. Once the Jubi was within striking range, the Nibi no Bakaneko unleashed the Great Cat Claw spell which generated a pow fire. The shell of the Jubi was sent flying through the air, only to be greeted with the rapidly rotating form of Isobu. Kaganade. The Sanbi no Kyodai had curled himself into a ball, his dark blue-colored magic energy allowing his rotation speed to increase exponentially to perform the Shadow Stroke spell. The Jubi's body was impaled by the spikes and thus it was carried along for the ride as Isobu continued to roll around. The Jubi's flesh was then torn apart by the unintentional trip and the momentum carried the 10 tails skyward where he was met by the Yanbi no Saru as the red-furred gorilla's leg was encased in lava. Shikugai Kokyaku. The scorching armored leg spell slammed into the Jubi with explosive force, a shockwave racing through the air. The shell of the Jubi roared in agony from the burning pain. Tsunori. Kakuo stampeded across the battleground like a charging bull, his horns alight with white magic energy. The horn-breaking spell slammed into the Jubi's back and the larger-tailed beast practically folded over the Gobi no Umarika's skull as his horns dug into it. However, the Jubi did not remain attached to Kakuo for long as the force of the skull-bashing strike had the brown-skinned behemoth rocketing towards Seiken as he breathed out a stream of corrosive acid. Shirokyu. A powerful blast of acid-green liquid ate away at the Jubi's flesh while also sending through the air once more only to be knocked skyward by Chome. The Nanabi no Kabutomushi followed after her opponent, climbing higher to get above it before descending in a curved arc to meet her ascending enemy. Gekito Yokaku. Light green magic energy cloaked her horn, making it shine. Hence the spell's name, Spear Attack Shining Horn. Another shockwave echoed across Aeolus as the Jubi was sent reeling from the force of the attack, the wind force incapacitating it and leaving it unable to protect or defend itself. Gyukin. Gyuki was never one for creative naming for his spells, and a name like Ox Fist highlighted that fact. Ebony magical energy, black as ink, cloaked the octopus-tailed beast's fist and he crashed it against the Jubi's cheek. The force of the strike made the Jubi's body ripple, its head bending like a crescent moon as it spiraled through the air from the twist Gyuki had placed on the attack. Rikudo. Kitsunehanto, Kurama charged, pouncing like a predator upon his prey. He then raised his arms and channeled magic energy into them to allow them to grow in size. The fox hunt spell slammed down on the Jubi's body, sending it crashing down into the ground with destructive force and creating a newly formed crater. Gather your tails, Kurama roared and the other Biju Exceed followed through with the attack.
Unison raid. Biju Soshiniki. The Biju Exceed cried out as magic energy blazed along the length of each respective tail they aimed to attack with. The 9 tails slammed down on the fallen body of the Jubi with a pillar of dust and dirt stretched towards the heavens as the Jubi's crater expanded even further and its body was forced down deeper into the Aedolesian wasteland. The Jubi released a low growl, fighting to remove itself from the imprint it had created in the earth.
Quickly, now's our chance. They placed their respective forehands and paws atop Kurama's own, channeling their magic energy into the golden-furred kitsunes. Kurama's eyes glowed with power and an aura of gold and silver, like the sun and the moon, sprung to life around his body. The others then retreated from their positions as Kurama made numerous intricate hand motions as he channeled the magic energy of the Rikudo mage arts into his hands. The golden portion of his aura became a bright circular sun on his right palm, while his left palm channeled the silver half and became a shining crescent moon. You will never be resurrected again, Kurama promised as he slammed his palms down in the center of the Jubi's eye. Rikudo. Chibaku Tensai. Kurama leapt away as he pulled palms off of the Jubi's eye. The sun and moon symbols had merged together and completely encompassed the Jubi's crimson eye, now replaced by a white sun being held in the embrace of a black crescent moon. Gravitational energy then began to form with the Jubi's shell being the center point. The earth rumbled before massive chunks of the Aedolesian wasteland began to rise up into the air alongside the Jubi. The large pieces of stone then began to slam into the Jubi's body from all angles, even drawing in remnants of the islands that had formed from the earlier conflicts involving the 10-tailed beast. After a full minute, the seal had completed its job and what had once been the Jubi had now become a large celestial body made entirely of stone that could rival the moon of Earthland in size as it cast its massive shadow over the crater it had created. The 9 sighed in relief and Kurama's body reverted back to its original state as he released his hold over the 6 paths mode. A period of silence filled the dimension of Aeolus as all eyes watched the massive moon. And then the cheers occurred. The Exceed all cheered for their creators. Shukaku, in all his vanity, welcomed the praise. The rest of his siblings were either indifferent or very bashful in the cases of Isobu and Gyuki. The battle was finally over. The celebrations brought about hugs and kisses between the former residents of the now destroyed island of Extalia, and as things began to quiet down, a certain dimension-hopping prince of Aeolus had managed to arrive with the Mokuton using Exceed having gone to retrieve him. Hashirama dropped him off in front of the 9 and the blue-haired mage slowly made his way in front of the 9-tailed kitsune. Kurama-sama. The Kyubi turned his head to acknowledge the blue-haired prince of Aeolus as said prince brought himself down on one knee. I would just like to publicly thank the 9 for all that they have done to save the kingdom and the entirety of the world of Aeolus. However, most importantly, he shifted his position and the 9 all watched with indifference as the human planted his palms and head on the ground, bowing deeply to them. I would like to apologize to you, your siblings and the entirety of Extalia on behalf of my now deceased father, King Faust, for all that he has done to our dimension. I hope that you can find it in your hearts to be merciful towards humanity and… Hold your tongue, boy. Kurama calmly interrupted Mistogen and the prince did as he was told. He was then pulled to his feet as the kitsune's crimson-furred tail wrapped itself around his torso. Your actions are not your father's. King Faust was blinded by his devotion to his people, and by the power that Eternano would supply. However, after all that has happened, I am sure you are aware of what is to come next. I do. Mistogen nodded. Next, Natsu asked, there's something else coming? A new enemy? Not an enemy, Natsu. Mistogen replied to his guildmate. Mainly the situation which will occur now that the battle is over. Oh, Natsu replied. Su, what exactly will happen? The fire Dragonslayer's answer came in the form of the singularity in the fabric of space and time. Looking skyward, all eyes gazed upon the swirling black vortex, and suddenly, large streams of gold and white magic energy descended it. What's happening? Natsu looked down at himself, taking note of the sudden transparency that was beginning to occur over his body as well the bodies of his friends. The same thing began to happen to the Exceed, the other Dragonslayers, and even the 9 themselves. Particles of gold and white were being drawn from their bodies and into the streams before being carried up into the anima. Mistogen, Urza turned to Jalal's doppelganger with a raised eyebrow, taking note of his seemingly stoic expression. His head was bent low enough that his hair shadowed his eyes somewhat, but the shine of sadness was present to all that gazed into his obsidian orbs. A sad smile adorned his face as he raised his head and looked mates, staring them dead in the face. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden. Gentle hands. The Jubi's presence did its job and drained all magic from the atmosphere. When you first arrived here, we had barely any Eternano in our atmosphere, but as of now, Daedalus is truly a dimension without magic. The blue-haired man explained. As a result, the law of opposites which engages in our universe will come into effect. The anima will soon open and all forms of magic will be taken from Daedalus and returned to Earthland. Magic cannot exist where it cannot thrive, and as such, a balance of a magic-less dimension will be what exists beside the magic-filled one of Earthland. But, if that happens… Lucy looked at the S-class mage before her with a frown. You won't be able to come back to our world. You won't be able to come back to the guild, Gray specified. I'm afraid not, Lucy. The 9, the Exceed, and all of you mages will therefore be locked away from Daedalus, and magic will never grace this dimension ever again. Mistogen said. After everything that's happened, I will be honest when I say my times I shared with you all in Earthland were actually some of the best moments I could ever wish for. To have nakama like you all. It was truly a blessing, and I will always be proud to have been a part of the guild. The Exceed had almost finished being taken to Earthland's dimension, and soon the members of Fairy Tail were the ones being enveloped in the golden glow of the magic streams. His obsidian eyes then widened when he saw the mages of Fairy Tail all stand before him with a hand raised in the shape of a backwards L, as they began to degenerate into particles of light before his eyes. You'll always be a part of the guild, Mistogen. Gray stated firmly. Fairy Tail will see you as family, and nothing will change that, no matter how far away you are. Gray, now as a member who is leaving the guild, you must be educated on the 3 laws they must follow. Natsu raised 3 fingers, bringing down his ring finger first. First, you must never, for the rest of your life, reveal any tactics that could be provided as a hindrance to Fairy Tail. Second, you must not contact any past clients for personal gain, Mistogen said. That's right. The son of Igneel nodded in confirmation before leaving up his index finger. And third, though our paths have diverged, you must continue to live out your life with all your might, got it? Mistogen's eyes widened even further, tears beginning to stream down his face. A gentle smile stretched across his face and he gave a stiff nod. You got it, Natsu. The mages of Fairy Tail were almost gone from his view, and just before they did, he returned the backwards L hand sign. On that note, the Fairy Tail mages vanished and Mistogen bore witness to the other Dragonslayers vanishing. I'll see you on the other side, Naruto said. Just keep Pillow-chan warm for me. I haven't slept on it in a while. Kurama chuckled as Naruto rolled his eyes at him. The moment Naruto had vanished, the 9 all turned back to Mistogen. Magic will never grace this dimension ever again, Mistogen, as you said. What should I do? The blue-haired man asked. The people will want new leadership. They will need new leadership, and even though I'm the royal prince. You'll be fine, Mistogen. Natabi spoke with a motherly tone as she patted the human on his head with a claw. You are not your father despite the fear you have that you may turn out like him one day. How did you? The former Fairy Tail mage's eyes widened and the Bakaneko gave a wink of her green eye. Female intuition, was the Nibby's reply. Become a king worth looking up to. Your father had been like that once, but magic corrupted him. Without magic, your world will undoubtedly change, and so as king of this dimension it will be up to you to show them the proper path, Yuki informed him. And it seems that we're next in line to go, Shukaku said as he noticed the golden aura that encompassed the bodies of himself and his siblings. Listen brat, you'll get along great with the people. You run alongside the supposed strongest guild in Fury, and you got a hell of a lot of experience dealing with unruly bastards if the rumors about Fairy Tail I've heard are true. As crude as he makes his points, Shukaku does make sense. Kurama smirked as he got his expected rise out of his Tanuki brother. You seem to have a good head on your shoulders, and learning to rule will undoubtedly be difficult, but you are a better man than your father will ever be. You recognized his flaws and thus you know not to make the same mistakes. It is the job of the new generation to impart new ways of thinking and innovation to bring about progress. You will be the first in the line of Edalesian kings to bring about a dramatic change in the past 40 years, Mistogen. Kurama then held out a paw and the other Biju followed suit, resting their forelimbs atop each other's. We give our blessing to you, King Mistogen of Edalis. May the odds be ever in your favor. Thank you. Mistogen bowed his head and, just to humor the nine, he bumped his fist against Kurama's palm. Yeah, so don't fuck it up. Shukaku spoke with a joking tone just as the nine were all on the verge of disappearing from their home dimension. Shukaku. The 8 Biju all turned to their youngest sibling with a glare. What? The tanuki exclaimed. I was just joking, geez, grow a funny bone will ya. If it didn't happen in front of his eyes, Mistogen would never have believed it if someone were to tell him the nine were childishly arguing amongst one another. That was the last scene that Mistogen, and the dimension of Edalis itself, would ever see of the progenitor beings of magic and their creations. Mistogen looked up at the sky where the Jubi's new moon hung, floating along the random patterns of gravitational pulls before turning around and heading towards his kingdom. He then paused, sweat dropping as he came to realize that the glacier Gray had created was still there. First job as king. And I'm going to have to explain why there's a glacier made of black ice outside the capital's walls, he sighed. Such was the life of a king. Wasteland, border of Seven and Fury, Earthland. The dark clouds obscured the skies with pouring rain darkening the ruined landscape as the waters were absorbed by the soil. Said clouds suddenly began to swirl and a powerful burst of magic energy was being emitted from the very atmosphere itself. The darkness from the rip in the space-time continuum suddenly unleashed a single powerful beam from its depths which crashed down on the wasteland before it began to dissipate to reveal the images of the nine. The other 8 Biju exceed all turned to the Ichibi of the group as the giant tanuki of sand rolled around in the mud, his large arms swiping wildly at the stump of his neck. The 8 then all sweat dropped as the tanuki's body dramatically fell over and became still. The other members of the 9 all looked to each other and then back at the stump of his neck as the sands began to shift. With a comically audible pop, Shukaku laughed as he pointed a claw at his siblings. I got you guys, didn't I? Shukaku exclaimed. I totally did, didn't I? You don't have to lie or be shy about it. I know I got you guys, ha ha ha. Slap. Ow. Shukaku glanced down at his cheek which bore a clawed paw print made of glass. The glass quickly began to crack before shattering, but the tanuki turned his golden eyes to the perpetrator that was his eldest brother as evidenced by the crimson flames that had been cloaking the kitsune's claws. Was that really necessary, Kurama? Shukaku asked as his face quickly regenerated. Yes. Yes it was. Why? Because that was the one time I didn't have to see your stupid face, but you still ruined that for me. Kurama replied as the remainder of his flames dissipated, and also because you're an idiot. I thought you cared, Baka Kitsune, Shukaku growled. What if I had actually lost a piece of me? Do you all not even care that I could have lost some part of my body to the space-time continuum? Shukaku. Kurama's deadpan returned with a vengeance as his crimson orbs met the golden ones of the Ichibi no Tanuki. You're a Tanuki made of sand. Even if you were missing something, you could literally just make a new one. Well, you could literally just shut the fuck up. Shukaku raised a middle claw at the gargantuan fox which earned a few snickers from the kitsune's other brothers while his sisters merely rolled their eyes. Though it was hard to tell with Chome since she didn't seem to have any eyes. Oni-sama. Don't bully Shukaku, Matabi frowned at her fellow pyrokinetic. But Matabi, he's being an idiot, again. Kurama's defense was not accepted as Matabi's eyes narrowed. The Bakaneko turned to the giant kabutomushi beetle across from her before they both turned back to Kurama. Yuki. The Nibbies called to her Yushioni of a brother had been responded to as the Hachibi delivered a prompt slap to the back of the kitsune's head. Ow. Kurama turned to glare at Yuki, but he was suddenly slapped on the back of his head again. This time, the blow was dealt by Kokuo's tail, at 2, Kakuo. I will take advantage of every opportunity I can to slap you, dear brother. Son Goku's slap followed directly after and the lava-spewing gorilla laughed as the strike had sent the mighty Kyuubi down into the mud. Son continued to laugh, but his laugh quickly began to lose volume as the rainy skies suddenly released a bolt of lightning when Kurama climbed back onto his feet and shifted into his bipedal stance. Yuki. Son. Kakuo. Kurama's voice was sickeningly sweet as his pupils became crosses and his crimson irides became a bright orange gold. His fur shifted colors as golden flames licked at his body. You know I hold back all the time now since I can use Rikudo Moto. Do you want me to wreck you with Hagoromo Gigi's powers? His killing intent spiked and a toothy grin spread across his face. Please say yes. Now, Kurama. The Gobi no Umerika laughed nervously as he, Yuki and Son Goku backed away from the now golden-eyed Kitsune. Let's not get too hasty here. Isobu quickly crawled between his two brothers and held up his tails in a placating manner. See, can you guys not fight? The Sandbee quickly became nervous as he met the battle-crazed expression of his eldest sibling. He curled up within his shell like a frightened armadillo, but still kept his one eye out to see what Kurama's reaction would be. The 9 siblings then paused when they felt as if they were being stared at. Kurama dropped the 6 paths mode and the 9 all turned their heads slowly to the side where they were met with the flabbergasted expressions of their creations. The fairy tale mages and the other Dragonslayers. Yes, even Naruto was astounded at how his partner was currently acting with his siblings.
The blonde son of Aknologia had spent years with the fire-breathing Kitsune. He had witnessed Kurama's capacity for emotion and being an asshole, but it seemed him being an older brother brought something else entirely, and the fact that watching his best friend calling upon the might of his full power just to show masculine sibling dominance over his younger brothers minus Isobu was something he never would have expected to witness.
Then again, not many people would think of seeing 9 270-foot-tall monstrosities of sentient magic energy that would be capable of acting like children. The sound of the rainfall was practically white noise until Shukaku broke the silence. What? You look like you've never seen brothers and sisters fight before. Shukaku scowled as he looked down at Naruto. And I don't even get why you're gawking at us when you should be more focused on getting some damn clothes. All eyes immediately shifted from the 9 to the son of 2 wizard saints. In his battle with the Jubi, Naruto had lost a vast majority of his clothing, but activating the skill of dragonification had done the job of completely removing any and all traces of what he would have had left. Turning into a literal dragon who was half the size of the actual black dragon of the apocalypse could end up doing that. Of course, being raised by said black dragon had removed any sort of sense of shame from the divine Dragonslayer as he looked down at his naked form. You say that as if I am supposed to be embarrassed, Shukaku, Naruto stated. Shukaku's eyes widened as he looked at the blue-eyed man before turning to Kurama. Does he have no shame? No, he lost that a long time ago. Kurama chuckled before tapping a claw against his chin and thought. How old do you think you were when that happened, brat? 11? 12? 12. The blonde confirmed. His ears twitched as he caught the sound of something heading towards his face. Before the unknown object could make contact, he quickly generated a blade of wind and sliced the object in half. The 2 halves of white cloth quickly soaked up the rainwater and became brown stained with mud when they fell into it. Naruto glanced down and raised an eyebrow as he looked up from the towel to see the outstretched arm of the celestial spirit mage. Cover yourself up, Lucy exclaimed as held out a hand in front of Urza. Urza, hand me another towel to give to the Fujin. Okay, but I don't understand why you're being so loud about it, Urza said as she took out another towel to hand to her guildmate. What do you mean you don't understand? It's indecent, perverted and all around just plain wrong to stand up naked in front of others without any clothes on. Lucy turned to her other guildmates. I am you guys. Actually, I don't really see the problem, Natsu said as he clasped his hands behind his head casually. The guy literally just helped save all our lives. If he wants to be naked, let him be naked. Happy exclaimed. Not really sure about the saving our lives thing since I wasn't there for most of it. Thanks for coming to save me after I fell off the giant metal dragon by the way. Gray quickly quipped to the son of Igneal. But I mean, if you want to be nude, be nude. Gray said as he too now stood nude in the rain. Lucy sighed down her face in exasperation. That's right. I forgot, I have an idiot with a stripping habit and a girl who doesn't know what the definition of armor is. For some reason, I feel she's insulting us, Urza said as Lucy handed the white cloth to her brother. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer wrapped the towel around his waist before looking to his younger twin, taking note of her disapproving gaze. Though there may be some truth to her words. You can't stand up in the middle of a crowd and be naked, Oni-sama. There was a moment of silence as deadpan gazes became focused on the daughter of 2 wizard saints. She tilted her head cutely while blinking her brown eyes in confusion. What? I don't want to hear that from you of all people, Titania. Naruto's eye twitched as a dark expression adorned his face. And what is that supposed to mean? She asked. She puffed out her cheeks and lightly glared at the taller mage while placing her hands on her hips. It means that you should probably tell him about your little side job that you had taken up when we found you. Gajeel, Juvia and Roshi piped in. The world stopped spinning for Urza at that moment, her brown eyes wide and her mouth agape. The look of betrayal she sent to the 3 Dragonslayers was nothing compared to the utter embarrassment that came right after. I was referring to her armors not performing their proper function as actual armor. Like Heartfilia said, you are clearly not aware of what the definition of armor is. Armor covers your entire body in a protective layer of hardened steel. Those things she calls armors barely cover her chest, let alone her entire body. Why would you bring up such an event? That's something Urza-chan should tell you. Roshi giggled perversely. Go on Urza-chan, tell, I am. The Water and Iron Dragonslayers released their own giggles of amusement at the Lava Dragonslayer's words. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer's curiosity peaked at that point as he directed his sapphire orbs back in the direction of his shorter sister. What are they talking about, Titania? Is it the reason why you had glitter in your hair when we were in Edelus? You remembered that? Naruto nodded. Well, Urza gulped. There's an explanation for that? Naruto snorted, rolling his eyes as he folded his arms in front of his chest. Oh, There is there? Then by all means, please, go ahead. Oh yes, please. The 9 piped in as they nestled themselves lower to the ground. Do tell. The look of betrayal she had originally sent towards Juvia, Gajeel and Roshi was now directed to her guildmates as they too wished to hear her tale. What? Why? Urza exclaimed. Wendy, please, you're my only hope, say something. Actually Urza-san, I'm curious as well, Wendy said with a nervous laugh. The daughter of wizard saints could only release high-pitched squeaks, her ability to form words being overridden by the shock and crushing embarrassment she felt from being the center of attention on such a topic. She took a few slow steps back as her twins stalked towards her like a predator with their prey. Feeling as if she were to be cornered, the Titania of Fairy Tail immediately activated her re-equip magic and donned her flight armor. However, her level of enhanced speed did little to aid her escape as Naruto vanished into the wind and caused her crash into his sturdy form. The brown-eyed weapons master cowered before the divine Dragonslayer. His blue eyes gained a shine of white to increase his intimidation factor as his massive frame encompassed her body in its shadow. And now you don't really want to know this story, do you? Urza laughed nervously. You couldn't be bothered with such drivel. You're deflecting, Urza. The redhead gained a lump in her throat as the blonde referred to her by her actual name instead of her mage title. This was not looking good for her. Well, you see, if it weren't for the rainfall, Urza would be noticeably sweating as she searched for an explanation. Naruto tapped his foot against the muddy earth while folding his arms in front of his chest. I'm waiting. What is this side job that those 3 mentioned? Judging from your reaction, it does not seem to be something worth being proud of. Well, when I got separated from my guildmates, I got hungry and went to a bar. I couldn't pay for my food since I had no money, and so to work off the money I had to do other things. Urza was almost as red as her hair as she recalled her actions. And were those other things Titania, Lucy, Gray, Natsu and Happy all gained looks of confusion as they observed the interaction between the 2 powerful mages. You know, the Fujin is taking this rather seriously, Gray said. Yeah, Happy nodded in agreement. It's almost as if he cares. Did something happen between him and Urza in Edelus? Lucy asked. Not that I'm aware of. Natsu hummed and thought. Though now that you mention it, when Gray and I were handling those 2 demon things back at the castle, they did look like they were having a little chat before she went to fight against Nightwalker. I didn't really catch it though. Too much external noise. Oi, Kurigane. What do you want, Salamander? Gajeel scowled in annoyance at the pink-haired Dragonslayer. You were close by when Urza was talking with the Fujin. What did they talk about before she went to go fight Nightwalker? Gajeel blinked owlishly. You mean you didn't hear? Scarlet's the… Well, I mean, should she even be called Scarlet anymore? Man, this whole being brother and sister thing is gonna make me wonder what I should call her now. Whoa. The members of the strongest team all waved their hands wildly. What did you just say? When? How? Why? Happy exclaimed. I dunno. Gajeel shrugged his shoulders. It wasn't really something to discuss at the time, what with needing to go fight all those doppelgangers up on Edelus. Geez. Gray ran a hand through his hair. Gigi's might get another heart attack and actually die if he hears this. If, Natsu exclaimed. More like when, Gigi is going to have to hear this. Though, now that I think about it, the way they are acting now. The blonde celestial spirit mage glanced in the direction of the 2 siblings. It kind of makes sense why he seems to interested in Urza and is acting the way he is with her. Who knows, maybe having a sibling will help Urza in the long run. Especially when her brother is practically the most dangerous man on the continent. Look at me when I talk to you, Urza. Then again, Lucy's sweat dropped. You said you couldn't pay it off through monetary means, so does that mean you? Naruto's eyes widened in shock before they narrowed in disgust. Did you SXU allies solicit yourself just to pay for food? All eyes widened at Naruto's words. Gajeel, Juvia and Roshi immediately burst out laughing at the older Uzumaki twins' assumption, and their laughter only increased when turning to Urza. Her face was now an even brighter shade of crimson as her expression resembled that of a goldfish. What, Oni-sama? No, Urza exclaimed. I did not become a whore, it was just pole dancing. Just pole dancing? Titania, you mean to tell me? Naruto's eye twitched heavily as he processed the information. That prior to our meeting in the capital city, you were in a scantily clad outfit in a drinking establishment and performing maneuvers against a pole for the entertainment of others? There was an almost deafening silence as the daughter of 2 wizard saints poked at the muddy wasteland with the toe of her armored boot. She then released a nod and Naruto's eye twitched with even more intensity. The blonde quickly turned around and began to walk off. I have no more blood relatives. Oni-sama. Urza gawked at her twin at how he was blatantly disowning her as his sister. I thought you believed in me.
Not anymore. No, you're not getting away. Urza quickly wrapped herself around her older twin's leg. Naruto ignored her presence and continued to move forward, THNG to take 1 step forward with his free leg while being forced to drag his Urza-bound limb through the mud.
Titania, you're embarrassing yourself. I don't care, she exclaimed. I am your sister. I have no sister. Naruto shook his leg frantically, but her grip was superb. If he had still recognized her as his sister, he would have been very impressed with it, but at this current point in time. Let go, Titania. Never. Spy Network HQ, Easter Fiorian Mountains, Fury. 3 days later, Sue had seen many things in her life. Being a Phantom Lord Mage once upon a time had granted her the opportunity to travel across the Kingdom of Fury and witness the many different cultures of different towns, and in some cases she even went across to the Kingdom of Seven. When she had accepted her job to be a member of the Ogono Fujin spy network, and somehow earning the rank of his second-in-command when running the entire castle, she was far more accepting of the wild and weird events that began occurring around her. From seeing the heart attack to finding the Magic Council's secret biological weapons lab, she could claim that she had seen it all. However, nothing could have prepared her or her fellow spy network members for what they were witnessing before them. Sue? Yeah, Alex? The dark-skinned woman didn't shift her gaze, her focus placed entirely on the scene before her. You see the cats too, right? Alexander asked. Yup. How did this even happen? Ash asked. I know crazy stuff has happened ever since we were employed by Fujin-sama, but sometimes I wonder just what my breaking point will be. Nobunaga scratched his beard and thought. I mean, they were only gone for a little more than a week. What on Earthland could have happened in such a short time frame? The former Phantom Lord Mage then blinked as he glanced down at the little blonde woman muttering words beside him. Haru, you alright? Kitty cats. So many kitty cats. The other Phantom Lord Mages all sweat dropped at the green-eyed woman. It took a lot of willpower from Haru not to just throw herself into the throng of Exceed and cuddle them all, but the fact that the Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobu were standing before them was enough incentive to not do that. She was too entranced at the sight of so many of her favorite animal being present to take note of the fact that she was earning the stares of all the surrounding spy network members. I worry for her. They all thought only to be distracted by the approaching footsteps of Naruto's surrogate sisters and the Exceed partner of one Sky Dragonslayer. Hi Su-chan. Hello. Wendy smiled cutely up at the dark-skinned girl. Haku-sama, Wendy-sama, Charles-sama. Naruto's second-in-command gave a bow alongside her fellow spies before turning to the Ice Dragon Slayer. Haku-sama, may I ask a question? Of course, Su-chan. What's up? Well, I think I speak for everyone here when I say that we have no idea what the hell is going on. Haku giggled as she scratched the back of her head in embarrassment. Actually, Su-chan, we're just as confused as you are. When we dropped the fairy tale mages off in Oshibana town, most of us, we were sleeping on the way back. From what I gathered though, it seemed like Shagat wanted an audience with Oto and Kurama-chan, so your guess is as good as mine. The curiosity in the throne room increased tenfold as all eyes turned in the direction of the scene in front of them. The Ogono Fujin sat upon his obsidian throne with the Onibi Myobu, or Kyubi no Yoko depending on what moniker you wanted to call him, resting upon his comfy red velvet cushion, Pillow-chan. Fu, Juvia, Roshi and Gajeel all stood to the blonde's left, while to the left of the fox-costumed Exceed, 8 other costumed Exceed were present. The 9 were all present before their subjects, the several hundred Exceed that had survived the onslaught of both the Edalesian army and the Jubi. The one-winged monarch of Extalia walked towards the mighty Kitsune. All attention was now directed on the proxy of the 9 as she placed herself in a kneeling position before her creators. Kurama-sama, I just wish to ask, what exactly should we do? The 9 all blinked as they turned to each other and then back to the white-furred Exceed. You are free to do as you wish, Shagat. Kurama replied. We may have created you, but Extalia and Edalis are no longer present for you to rule over. You are no longer a queen and thus you are no longer bound by your obligations. You and all the other Exceed are all allowed to do as you see fit with your lives from this point onwards. I see. Shagat muttered. She turned back to the Exceed populace and frowned when she took note of their expectant gazes. Her former council members made ushering motions with their paws and Shagat couldn't help but sigh as she turned back to face them. Then, if it is all right with you, Kurama-sama, may we continue to stay by your side? Meh. Kurama shrugged his shoulders and the Exceed couldn't help but sweat drop at the uncaring response from the strongest of their creators. So, is that a no, the fox-costumed Exceed replied before turning to Naruto. It's just that 40 years after arriving in Earthland, I've been partnered up with the brat. Like it or not, I go where he goes. So if you want to come with me, that's fine. However, we have an unspoken agreement that it takes both of us to make certain decisions. This is one of them. All the Exceed turned to the son of Agnologia. The son of the Black Dragon looked up at Kurama and glared at the 9-tailed fox. You spout the world of bullshit at times, you know that? Yeah, but is it really bullshit if it's true? It's not. I've always done what I wanted when it came to this organization, same as you have, you annoying fluffball. Naruto growled in annoyance. These are your people. Not mine. If you don't want them here, then tell it straight to their faces. Do not act like a coward and use me as a deterrent. Kurama's crimson orbs narrowed as he bared his fangs. I am never a coward, Naruto. You of all people should know that. Then by all means, the stage is yours. Naruto made an exaggerated sweep of his arms as he gestured to the remnant of the Extalion kingdom. Said Extalions kept their eyes glued to the fox-costumed Exceed as he faced them. Fine, but it's best if I were to address you in my true form. Kurama muttered. His body glowed with magic, muscle and bone rearranging themselves as he took on his true appearance as a kitsune. Three tails swished lazily behind him, but the horse-sized fox's expression was that of utter seriousness. Shagged. Yes, Kurama-sama, tell me, do you speak for all of the Exceed in this room or do you speak for yourself? I am the proxy of the Nine, first and foremost, but I do take the responsibility of speaking for my people. My word is to be treated as the word of all Exceed in this room who are my subjects. The other Exceed in the room all nodded in confirmation to the precognitive feline's words. We do all wish to stay and serve the Nine for as long as we are capable. We may not be warriors, but we will do whatever is required of us. I see. Kurama turned to his siblings. Shukaku, Matabi, Kakuo and Chomei are already staying with me. What about the rest of you? Isobu, Son Goku, Seiken and Gyuki all turned to each other before shrugging their shoulders. It's not like we have anywhere else to go. And you're alright with Son staying with us, Lava Dragon? Naruto asked as he turned to the Lava Dragonslayer. The son of Volcanus shrugged as well. Truth be told, I've come to see what makes you so appealing to the other kids. He ruffled Gajil's and Juvia's hair, causing them to groan in annoyance. If it's alright with you, I'd like to stick around as well. After our fight with the Jubi, I can tell a ton of shit will happen if I choose to stay, and after seeing you use dragonification. Roshi shuddered in anticipation. It gets my blood pumping, and getting back into the age is gonna be a fun way to try and get back in shape. I used to be able to go Doragon Fosu at will back in the day too, you know? So, you wish to challenge me one day then? Scared I'll whoop your ass? Naruto snorted in amusement. Only in an alternate dimension would that ever be possible. Very well, I'll accept you into my ranks. You will be one of my executives alongside Zabrak, Fu, Yugito and Han. As you command, Fujin-sama. Roshi replied with an exaggerated bow, a smirk adorning his face as he caught Naruto rolling his eyes. Kurama cleared his throat to get the attention of the two Dragonslayers. You two done flirting? The icy glares from the Dragonslayers of energy and lava were enough to be his answer. With a nod, the gargantuan Kitsune turned his head back to his siblings and offered them a kind smile. Well, the Nine are all rallying behind the brat's banner. Kurama announced. If you wish to rally behind me, then that is your choice. Personally, I do not care for what you wish to do, but if you do indeed want to remain with us, then you will follow my commands along with the Fujins. You will be integrated as a part of our organization, a spy network whose aim to gain access to information across the continent of Ishgar. From this base in Fury, our expansion will be directed to reach as far as the Pengrande Kingdom. So long as you are a part of this organization, you are no longer Exceed, and your former titles and ranks mean nothing. You are all be soldiers under my command. The sound of paws stamping on the hard floor echoed throughout the throne room as the small army of Exceed stood at attention and offered a salute to the Kyuubi no Yoko. Hi. Good. He nodded stiffly before turning to Gajil and Juvia, motioning them to step forward with one of his tails. The Iron and Water Dragonslayers moved from beside Naruto and placed themselves on either side of Kurama. Juvia Loxer, the Dragonslayer of Water. Gajil Red Fox, the Dragonslayer of Iron. These two mages are spies that we have placed within the ranks of the guild, Fairy Tail. Is that the same place that the other humans went to with Happy? When Exceed asked. Still can't get over how stupid that name is. The pyrokinetic fox muttered under his breath. Yes, the very same. Now as I was saying, Juvia and Gajil are our spies on the inside for Fairy Tail. As your first order of business, two of you will be personally selected by these two Dragonslayers to join them when they return back to their posts. The two former Phantom Lord mages turned to Kurama with wide eyes. Are you serious? Gajil asked. I get to pick my cat? Kurama-san, is this the reason why you wanted us to come back with you instead of heading back to Fairy Tail with Grey-sama and the others? The daughter of Levia asked. Aye sir. Kurama gave the blue-haired girl a sly wink. Jihei. Gajil's crimson orbs gained a shine of excitement and he hopped up and down with childish glee as he scanned the throng of Exceed. It was almost robotic in the way he seemed to scan each and every Exceed he came across. Said flying cats all fidgeted uncomfortably, some of the females covering their bodies as if they had been stripped naked. Some began to whisper their feelings of discomfort to one another, but they all jumped in fright when the son of Metallicana released a shout of, "Aha!" He immediately hopped down from the throne area and sifted through the hundreds of Exceed before latching onto his chosen. I choose this one. What? The black-furred Exceed looked down at the Iron Dragonslayer as he was raised high into the air like a plushy doll. Why? You have a sword. Gajil's statement was found to be true as he revealed the tiny red sword that was tied to the feline's back by a piece of rope. However, there were those of the Exceed population who immediately recognized the blade. "That's the Bustermarm," Nichiya exclaimed. The former captain of the Extelian Royal Army gained a ferocious look on his face as he reached for his own sword. "Gajil-san, I ask that you put down that Exceed. He is a criminal for treason against the crown and thus he should not be allowed to roam freely." "No," his immediate and blunt response earned flabbergasted responses from the Extelian Council and army members. "What? I picked him and so he's mine. I like him." Gajil smiled toothily at his new partner. "What's her name?" "Panther Lily. I like him even more now. Panther Lily is way cooler than Happy." There was no argument there. "Like your leader up there said, your ranks and whatnot don't matter here anymore. You follow the rules here on Earthland. I get to pick who comes with me, and war criminal or not, Lily's coming with me." Those who were once members of the Extelian Royal Army and Extelian Council all narrowed their eyes at the black-furred traitor. But Gajil quickly glared back at them with a flare of killing intent and magic. He rested Panther Lily atop his head before converting his arms into swords. "If you want to fight me for him, just know that I literally cut a building in half." Nichiya gulped as the tip of the sharp blade rested against his throat. He tucked his tail between his legs and immediately stepped back along with the other Exceed who had called for the traitor's blood. Gajil nodded in satisfaction before looking up at Lily with a grin. "So, can you use that sword?" "Well, I can make it bigger with a bit of magic." The tiny Exceed hopped off of his new partner's head before channeling his magic. Upon doing so, his body glowed with white light and suddenly the diminutive feline was so longer to diminutive. "Fuck, my cat is the best cat ever," Gajil exclaimed with a high-pitched squeal that was uncharacteristic of him. In the hearts of all men, there was the tiny bit of them that held onto their feelings of what it was like to be a child. The son of Metallicana could no longer restrain his upon seeing his little plushie of a partner become a 6-foot-tall, muscle-bound bipedal panther wielding a massive buster sword. Granted, Gajil would have been way more pleased if Lily had been a bipedal dragon or a mecha, but he sure as hell didn't mind. "I'm back to normal." Panther Lily blinked in confusion as he looked over himself. "I was only trying to increase the size of Bustermarm." The 9 all looked upon the transformation with just as much confusion as its user. Seems as though channeling magic energy into his body exhibits the same effects that Hashirama has when he wants to use the full power of his Mokuton," Yuki observed. "What do you think would have caused this?" Isobu questioned. "I'd say his magic got drained coming through the anima. It happened to us the first time we came through 40 years ago, didn't it?" Shukaku responded. "Though, it also appears that such a transformation would be rather taxing on one's magical reserves." Seiken commented as he took note of the sweat on Panther Lily's brow. Given that his magic reserves would have shrunk as well to accommodate for his change, he'll lose control over his form in about now. The Rokubi's prediction proved true as both Panther Lily and his sword shrunk down in size. The former Extelian knight panted heavily as he was picked back up and rested gently atop the head of his new partner. "Looks like I can't hold it for more than a minute. I'll probably have to work on that if I am to be of use to you as a partner in combat, Gajil." "Damn right you will," Gajil said as he scratched Panther Lily behind the ears. "You'll never be as strong as the 9, but you sure as hell are gonna be tough enough to let me kick Salamander's ass into the ground one day. I do not know who this Salamander is, but he sounds annoying. Gee. Another item on the list as to why I like you, Lily." The red-eyed Dragonslayer then turned to his blue-eyed companion as she was looking through the crowd of bipedal felines. "Oi, Juvia, you pick a cat yet?" The daughter of Levia didn't respond as she continued to search. Due to being treated like a pariah, Juvia had learned the value of not taking things at face value and she was willing to give others the chance to prove themselves. Maybe if she did judge based on appearance like Gajil, she would have an easier time choosing. Each Exceed she walked past met her eyes and followed after her when she didn't pick them. There were some looks of disappointment and she couldn't help but offer an apologetic smile to those particular felines. The water Dragonslayer continued to search through the crowd until she came across an Exceed who didn't meet her gaze. This particular Exceed had blue fur, but it was noticeably paler in comparison to Happy's bright blue color. Black eyes were directed at the floor as the feline fidgeted heavily while adjusting a pair of black, thick-framed glasses. Juvia knelt down to the Exceed's level and she couldn't help but giggle when she saw the feline release a gasp of surprise, revealing the jagged shark-like teeth which lined its jaws. "Hello." The water Dragonslayer gave a small wave to the frightened feline before planting a hand on her chest. "Juvia is Juvia. What's her name?" "Chh Chojuro. It's nice to meet you, Chojuro-san." Juvia smiled gently before directing a look of concern towards the black-eyed Exceed. "Juvia noticed that you seem nervous, are you alright?" Well." The pale blue Exceed spoke with a soft tone as he seemed to fumble over his words. "I guess. New world, new leadership." The pale blue Exceed adjusted his glasses once more. "It's a lot to process." "Juvia understands. The look of surprise on the former citizen of Extalia was met with a nod. Juvia once belonged to a mage guild called Phantom Lord. Juvia's old master was killed in battle, but she was taken in by Fujin-san, who allowed her to remain by Grey-sama's side. Being a part of Fairy Tail and a member of Fujin-san's spy network was a lot like changing worlds, and Juvia can understand trying to process following another leader. Things are scary at first, but they do get better. Things got a lot better for Juvia, and so Juvia picked up the bespectacled Exceed and turned to Naruto and Kurama. Juvia chooses Chojuro-san as her partner. Really? Are you sure? Chojuro stuttered. Juvia is very sure. Chojuro-san will be a good partner for Juvia, that Juvia is sure. Chojuro gulped before bowing his head. I will do my best, Juvia-sama. Now that you've chosen your partners, you are to return to Fairy Tail and resume your duties as active mages of the guild. Remember to update HQ on Fairy Tail's activities at the end of each week. Understood? Oh, and one last thing. The two Dragonslayers paused as they were about to head out the castle doors, confusion written across their faces as they looked at the smirk adorning the blonde's face. Now that you have partners, why not give them a test drive on the way to Magnolia? It's good weather for a flight. Juvia and Gajeel remained confused, but their eyes brightened when they glanced up at their partners as they summoned their era magic. Jihei. Race ya. Gajeel immediately raced out the door and jumped into the air. Panther Lily wasted no time in flapping his white feathered wings, taking off across the skies with a surprised Juvia staring after them. Her surprise quickly changed to annoyance as Chojuro picked her up to follow after them. Gajeel-san. You cheater. Fu laughed as the two Dragonslayers quickly vanished into the distance. With everything that goes on, I sometimes forget that calm days like this could exist. Though, I never would have pictured you to be the one to suggest a fun activity like flying back to Magnolia Town. It wasn't for fun, Wind Dragon. I said for them to give their partners the chance to showcase their abilities. Admit it, Fujin-kun. You gone soft. Fu immediately regretted her words when Naruto rose from his throne, kicked the mint-haired Dragonslayer in her knee to bring her down before gripping her by the wrist and twisted her arm to the point of almost breaking. You were saying, all hail Fujin-sama? I'm sorry, Fu exclaimed. Let my arm go. You're gonna break it, Chome, help me. The look of betrayal she sent her Exceed partner's way could not have been any more humorous as the Nanabi laughed at her pain. At 2, Chome? Tears flowed like waterfalls from her eyes only for the pain of her arm being twisted once more replaced the pain of her best friend's lack of help. Ow. Fuck. Goddammit. Alright. I get it, you aren't soft? Happy? Quite. Naruto released the daughter of Cyclonus from his grasp before adjusting his cloak and face mask. Naruto walked down from his throne, focusing his gaze on Su. Su, show Lava Dragon and Son Goku where their quarters will be located. Provided that your eavesdropping is as good as your leadership skills, you know that they are instated as executive members. Of course, Fujin-sama. The dark-skinned maid gave a nod to the son of Volcanus for he and the Yonbi to follow after her. They made their way towards the staircase that would lead to the upper levels of the castle. Once they did so, the son of Agnologia shifted to the other network members. Alexander, Ash and Haru. Fujin-sama. The three stood at attention before their superior. Isobu, Seiken and Gyuki noted that prior to coming into contact with us, they had come across humans which they respectively gained a partnership with. According to Isobu and Gyuki, their partners are Dragonslayers, and while Seiken's is not, he is described to be a very powerful mage as well. I want you to take them with you to the tech room and have them help you in trying to find these mages. Understood, Fujin-sama. The three members of the 9 all sprouted wings and flew after the 3 spy network members as they moved down the halls. Nobunaga. The goatee-bearing man followed the blonde's finger as it was pointed towards the multitude of Exceed. Take the Exceed and give them a proper layout of the castle. Fujin-sama. Nobunaga prepared to lead the Exceed throughout the grand piece of architecture, and Naruto made a mental tick to mark another one of his side tasks as managed. The son of Agnologia looked to the Dragonslayers of Sky and Ice, his stern gaze softened ever so slightly. Imoudo, Oni-san. We're going to the medical wing. We will discuss as we are walking. Fu, Haku, Chome, Matabi, Kakuo and Shukaku all followed behind Naruto and Kurama as he walked beside his surrogate little sister. Their footsteps echoed throughout the lengthy hallways of the castle, but those footsteps were quickly drowned out by the sounds of their voices. So tell me, how did the procedure go? I was able to forge an ice prosthesis and it was well made if I do say so myself. Haku said with a smirk of pride. Due to Yugito-chan's natural affinity for ice, the procedure didn't affect her much in terms of her internal physiology, but it was painful. That is to be expected. Naruto stated. Being able to meticulously attach an arm capable of recreating the flow of magic energy throughout the body is bound to have some complications. Imouto, as the medical expert of the organization and the one who performed the surgery, what was your take on the procedure? Well, Oni-san, as Haku-san said, due to her magical affinity for ice, attaching the prosthesis to her body was not as difficult as it would be if one were to use a flesh limb for a transplant, and was actually far less painful than what would be expected from a procedure involving an automale prosthesis. She will never be able to feel anything in that part of her arm ever again obviously, as she has no part of her peripheral nervous system attached to any sort of conduit to allow for nervous transmission. However, even if we were to be capable of allowing her to have sensation in the arm, I believe it would be both too risky as well as detrimental to her in the long run. Understood. The blonde nodded. And what of the seals? Were they able to produce the desired outcome? Yugito-san's been unconscious from the sedative days, Oni-san. Wendy replied as she tucked a few strands of hair behind her ear. If she were to wake up now, the pain and discomfort from the procedure would most certainly do more harm than good at this point. She still needs to recover. As a result, we aren't able to properly tell whether or not it actually works, but it was a successful attachment. Using her magic siphoning seals as well, we were able to graft her magic circulatory system's stems onto the artificial magic circuits the seals created. If everything goes well, Yugito-an should be able to use her ice mag to manipulate the limb like a normal human arm. In the battlefield setting, it is far more durable. The Ice Dragonslayer added, it is not susceptible to shifts in atmospheric temperature or pressure. It is forged from my own Dragonslayer ice, so nothing less than a punch from Natsu-kun's Iron Fist spell could break it. Also, as I said, it is resistant to temperature shifts and so it can withstand even the intense heat of the desert, and only dragonfire or the flames from the blades of Merlin can melt it. Also, with the magic circuits running through its design, she would be able to use it to forge an array of weapons. Though that is merely a hypothesis. Once Yugito-chan wakes up and completes her physiotherapy, then we can start going through combat training. When do you think she will be able to be taken off the sedatives and start her physiotherapy? Matabi asked. The Nibi no Bakaneko was very much worried for her partner, and it showed by how her flaming wings fluttered uneasily every few seconds. Hopefully by tomorrow, Matabi-san. Wendy replied as she hugged Charles a bit tighter to her body. I want Yugito-san to get better as quickly as possible too, but this is the first time I've done this sort of procedure. It's actually the first procedure of its kind to be done in history actually. How this ends up going, only the dragons know. Insert music. Fairy Tale Kazuna. The small group then paused as they were now standing outside the door that led to the blonde takeover mage's recovery room. The transparent glass that made up the vast majority of the wall beside the door gave them all a look at Yugito's condition. The prosthesis that now made up her right arm was currently obscured from view as it was being kept within a cooling chamber. The temperature reading -20 degrees Celsius on the chamber. Despite Haku's statements about the ice arm being practically immune to heat levels outside of those generated by dragonfire, they still took the precaution of using the cooling chamber. An oxygen mask was placed over her face as an IV was hooked up to her flesh and blood arm, sending normal saline into her bloodstream to keep her hydrated. However, the most notable thing inside the room was the fact that the sleeping visage of a heavily bandaged Han was found beside her. His larger hand had her smaller one resting in the center of his massive palm. Kakuo looked at the former head captain of the Rune Knights with a frown. How long has he been in there? Ever since she was brought out of surgery and into this room, Wendy replied. It's almost romantic in the way that those two have been bickering for the majority of our mission, and yet he's the one who seems to care the most. Fu released a hollow chuckle before turning to Naruto. You trusted me with that mission. You said that your opponent was a Dragonslayer and that she activated Doragon Fosu before Yugito lost her arm. Naruto informed the daughter of Cyclonus. From a positive perspective, it is best to say that you should be appropriately pleased that an arm is all that she lost. Well, I guess when you put it like that. If the circumstances were different, I would totally be teasing those two. Kakuo said with a small smile. But it's almost stupid the way he blames himself for her ending up like this. I guess at the end of the day, he still can't let go of what happened that day. You mean with Deidara? Fu asked. He told you? Fu nodded in confirmation to Kokuo's question. Yeah, he told me it as a way to kind of get out of my funk when I was stressing about Naruto making me lead the mission to begin with. Han got me to snap out of it, to take charge and be a leader. If anything, I should be the one wallowing in self-deprecation. I was the leader of that mission and I was the one that couldn't prevent this from happening to her. Fu then looked to her side as Haku pulled her into a tight embrace. Thanks. Anytime, Fu-chan. Sentiments aside, we have much work to catch up on. Matabi, Kakuo, you are free to stay here with your partners. The rest of you, with me. The two siblings nodded in thanks to the Apocalypse Dragonslayer before they went through the recovery room's door. Matabi nestled herself like a house cat on her partner's lap while Kakuo laid himself down by Han's ankles. The moment the door closed behind them, Naruto had already been moving out of the medical wing. He continued to move with purpose throughout the castle before he and Kurama looked to Shukaku. We're heading to the prison cells. Shukaku sighed. I had a feeling we would be. What's down in the prison cells? Chomei asked. Prison cells, Spy Network HQ. Eastern Fiorian mountain range, Fury. He wanted to kill them. He wanted to kill them all, but he couldn't. The seals on his body prevented him from accessing his magic, and even if he didn't have the seals, he was trapped within a steel room without his gourd. Without sand, he was at a loss. They had given him food and water to survive over the time he had been locked away, but he wanted to get out. He needed to get out. His head snapped up as he heard the sound of the door being unlocked. His eyes were wide, a manic light shining within those pupil-less green orbs as a wide grin stretched across his face as if it were going to split it in two. He charged towards the door with every intent of knocking down whoever was on the other side and tearing them apart. However, the red-haired 20-year-old came to a halt when Shukaku hovered in front of his field of vision. "Shukaku. Gaara," was the Ichibi's calm reply. "Shukaku, quickly, we must escape. Turn into your sand and we can escape, but first we can turn the others into corpses. Their blood and screams will solidify my existence once more. Shukaku, I need to kill, I need to." Slap. Gaara's eyes were wide with shock, time seeming to slow down as he felt the impact of the tanuki-like exceed's paw against his face. Gaara stumbled back, more out of surprise than the actual blow itself. His pale skin was reddened from the strike and he placed a hand over the point of impact. "That's enough, Gaara," Shukaku said. "You've been locked up in here for a while, but we're getting out and we don't have to kill anybody to do that." "How so?" was the redhead's question. Shukaku then hovered backwards, allowing Gaara to walk through the door and into the hallway of the lower levels of the castle. His green eyes then widened when he caught sight of the one who had placed him here in the first place. Ogo no Fujin. "Easy there, Gaara." The golden-eyed tanuki cat raised his paws in a placating manner. "You're free from the cell. It's okay now, alright?" Gaara grunted in disbelief as his jade orbs stared into the sapphire ones of his now former captor. The red-haired dark mage curled his lips into a snarl as he and Naruto stared down one another, the tension between the two 20-year-olds being almost palpable. The tension vanished almost as quickly as it came though, as Gaara shifted his focus to the Ichibi no Tanuki. "I find it very difficult to believe that he would be letting us go without any strings attached." Jade orbs fixated upon the Apocalypse Dragonslayer once more. "What do you want, Fujin?" "In all honesty, I do not require anything from you, as Shukaku is more than enough to do what this task entails. However," Naruto tapped a finger against his chin in thought, "it would be far better to perform the job if there were two of you to relay info at castle." "Relay information? Shukaku?" The sand magic user demanded an explanation as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. "A lot has happened in these past couple of days, Gaara," Shukaku explained. "I won't get into the nitty-gritty of it all, but I managed to be reunited with all of my brothers and sisters. They have all chosen to stay here as a part of this brat's spy network thing that he's been making, and if they are staying then I have no reason not to stay. As a result, I am now part of this spy network, and when we return to Grimoire Heart, we will be their moles." "You're betraying Grimoire Heart?" the red-haired sand user asked. Golden eyes rolled in their sockets as the sand-colored exceed released a snort of amusement. "Betrayal implies that we have some sort of a good thing going on between us and Grimoire Heart. Gaara, you and I both know that Hades was just keeping us around to fill the spaces in his 7 kin of purgatory after Milkovich brought us in. We were seen as tools, and due to your existential crisis you can take that in stride, but I am not a tool. I've been through enough shit to know that I won't take Grimoire Heart's bullshit like a whipped dog." The geokinetic feline said. "Think of it this way. I get stuff done for the sake of my family and you get a new purpose in life. You always wanted a reason to be alive. I say being a double agent is a good reason." "Why would you tell me all of this?" "Because Shukaku trusts you," Kurama said from his place atop Naruto's head. "As annoying as he is, I won't deny my little brother's judge of character. I could just as easily lie and say that I will accept the task and turn it around to use for my own benefit should I report this to Master Hades." The red-haired insomniac stated. "What would you do in the event of such an occurrence?" "Shukaku is just as bloodthirsty as you, boy." The Kyuubi chuckled. "He'll literally tear you apart if you do anything to compromise the mission." Gaara's face was non-expressive, but his eyes narrowed in thought as he processed the information. On one hand, he was alive and got to return to the Dark Guild under the guise of a double agent. On the other, he was forced into doing something against his will. But Shukaku was also threatening to destroy him. Shukaku was the one who helped him provide a massive bulk of magic to keep his sand armor spell activated during battle. And so the sand magic user could imagine just how creative Shukaku would become if he were to enact his hypothetical situation. "Very well." Gaara nodded his head. "I will be your eyes and ears in Grimoire Heart." "I know." Naruto reached into his cloak and pulled out a communication seal tag. He handed the piece of paper to his newest spy. "A mental link will be established between us for as long you supply the necessary amount of magic energy into the seal. Shukaku, you will not need one as I am aware of the mental link between the 9. You had this prepared beforehand," Gaara noted as he placed the seal tag in his pocket. Your confidence in my accepting of your terms is quite frightening, I must admit. How did you come to the conclusion that I would accept? Naruto smirked beneath his face mask, because I always get what I want. Rooftop, Spy Network HQ, Eastern Fiorian Mountain Range, Fury. Hashirama looked out across the vast landscape and he couldn't believe how vivid the colors of the Earthland dimension were. He had been on a mission by King Faust every time he had come through the anima, searching for members of the Nine to take back for his now-deceased master. As such, he never really had time to appreciate the scenery. The sea of greenery that decorated the mountains was akin to liquid emerald. He took in the variety of fauna that his exceptional vision allowed him to spy. Rabbits hopped through the bushes, female bears and wolves catered to their own offspring while the various winged creatures, birds and even wyverns, flew through the bright expanse of blue as white clouds drifted lazily by. With a deep inhalation, the red-armored Exceed released a sigh as he basked in the golden rays of the July sun. However, as he was glancing up at the sky, Hashirama gained a quizzical look on his face when he caught sight of the broken moon, its shattered pieces orbiting around the celestial body like a satellite. Holy crap! The Bane of the Nine blinked owlishly. What the fuck happened to the moon? You got me. Hashirama turned around to see Kurama hovering behind him. I've been wondering about that myself ever since I took note of it yesterday. Sue said it happened last week, so it was probably around the same time we went to Edelus. News networks are still covering it because pieces of the moon fell through the atmosphere and crashed down on Earth. They've been calling the event Heaven's Fall. Cool name. Kurama shrugged. I should probably ask Sue if she knows what happened when I get the chance. The crimson-eyed feline glided across and planted himself down next to the Mokuton user. You know, when we got back to the castle, you immediately said you would just sit up here on the roof and take a look around. We had time to give Roshi, Son Goku and the rest of the Exceed a tour of the castle, visit one of our recovering members who recently had surgery done, and even finished striking a deal with a new spy member. Yet, you're still here. To be honest, I wouldn't have been surprised if you would have taken the time to just fly away on your own. I could have, but I've been doing a lot of things since I was born in that tank. I just wanted to take a moment and just take it all in. A comfortable silence occurred between the two powerful beings of Edelus as they gazed out over the mountainous region of Fury. Hashirama couldn't help but smile at the scenery. You have a beautiful world here. I'll be honest, I never really noticed until that day we were taken back to Edelus. Kurama hovered over to the Mokuton user and sat next to him. I guess it's true what they say about how you never notice what you truly have until it's gone. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Obito's theme. And I guess I never really had anything to begin with. Hashirama stated. My whole life I was raised to follow King Faust with blind faith. I saw him as a father, you know? I don't even know when it was that he started seeing me less as a member of the court and more as a weapon to be exploited. He loved his people and he loved the kingdom. We know, Hashirama. Kurama planted a paw on his fellow Exceed's shoulder. But you know that he was in the wrong. I do. He sighed, running a paw through the black area of fur on his head. I'm ashamed of myself. He took the words of the very beings I captured to show me the error of his ways and to show me that I was the one at fault. In the end though, he was all I had. Now, I'm lost and I don't know what to do. Despite everything that's happened, you are just a youngling, Hashirama. The Kyuubi stated. You were created to be a weapon to fight against us, and so you never got the chance to really experience what it is like to grow up and mature. I'm not expecting you to accept, but I am willing to offer you a place among us here at the castle. Naruto holds a hell of a grudge. Rightfully so though, since you literally kidnapped me. The brown and black furred Exceed couldn't help but laugh at the fox-costumed feline's joking tone, but he shook his head.
I appreciate it, Kurama. I really do, but you're right. I never really did get to go out and witness Edelus and Earthland for what they had to offer. I think I'll just spread my wings and fly around. I'll check out the rest of this kingdom. Who knows, maybe I'll explore the entire continent or the entire dimension of Earthland. With Edelus cut off from us forever, it's kind of the only thing I got left. I mean, unless I can find Kinkaku again.
Kinkaku? Kurama gained a questioning look on his face. He's the guy the first came with when I fought you guys. A sheepish expression came across the wood MN recalling the event. To be honest, I can't remember exactly what happened that led to us meeting up, but he told me that you were with Naruto, though he called him by the Ogo no Fujin title at the time. I knew you were the Onibi Myobo, though judging from the whispers I hear around the castle, you've earned the moniker of Kyuubi no Yoko.
The circumstances under which I earned that name are less than unfavorable. The crimson-eyed cat scowled.
Well, anyway, I kinda just went with him. We weren't partners or friends, he just happened to come across me when he was looking for Naruto, asking if I knew where to find him. I kinda did though, since I was created to locate you and fight you. Did you know I could sense your magical energy signatures across this entire kingdom? Though I guess it could be from the fact that you were going all out with your full 9 tails and everything. Probably. Kurama sighed before climbing to his feet and holding out a paw. Well then, Hashirama. Despite our less than favorable manner of meeting, you did help Naruto to save my siblings and you saved the Exceed as well and I thank you for that. I mean it. I had to make up for what I did. I figured saving you 9 would be a start in making up for that. Hashirama chuckled as he also stood up, clasping paws with the fire user. So, I guess I'll see you when I see you? Good luck. The Mokuton user nodded before he let go of Kurama's paw and summoned forth his wings. With a few quick flaps, he was airborne and flying through the clouds, his body becoming smaller and smaller until he vanished into the distance. The moment the Elysian weapon had vanished, Kurama released a sigh and shrugged his shoulders as Naruto appeared behind him in a swirl of wind. He denied our offer? Yup. The reply was immediately as Kurama spread his wings and hovered towards his partner, nestling atop his golden locks. You know I never realized how soft your hair is. Haku lends you your conditioner. Ka-chan's genetics. Uzumaki have naturally soft hair.
I honestly can't tell when you're joking. You need to stop making jokes forever. Serious characters like you should never be capable of humor.
What happened to wanting me to be more human? Well yeah, but not that human. I mean sure you chuckle every now and then, but do you know how freaky it will be if someone hears you laugh? I never laugh. Naruto deadpanned. Exactly, Kurama exclaimed before shuddering. It's like screwing with the natural order. Naruto rolled his eyes before some forth the miniature tornadoes beneath his feet that created his flight spell. He then adjusted his position in the air before shooting off, the sound barrier shattering behind him as he quickly went from 0 to Mach speeds. Kurama gripped onto the son of Agnologia before a look of concern appeared on his face. Are you sure you want to do this? He asked. I mean, I know they know who we are now, but we have to. If we don't do it now, then we may never get the chance to do it again. I really hate facing problems that don't involve violence. The strongest of the 9 groaned into the Apocalypse Dragonslayer's hair. A few seconds passed, but Kurama's head suddenly snapped up with the expression of an epiphany present on his face. Oh, here's an idea. No, but you didn't even hear what I had to say. I don't need to know that what you're suggesting is either stupid or very stupid. Oh come on, Naruto. Fine. The son of 2 wizard saints sighed. What's your idea? Wipe their minds with, no, was the immediate answer. I'm not wiping their minds with my Byakugan. But it's a good idea, Kurama, shut up, hospital, Magnolia Town, Fury. Breathe in. Breathe out. Rin instructed to her patient. She listened to the sound of air moving through her patient's lungs before removing the stethoscope from her patient's back. Very good. You have some very clear and strong-sounding lungs, Romeo-kun. The dark purple-haired 6-year-old beamed at the brown-haired doctor before turning to his father. Mikao couldn't help but smile at his son's expression as he handed him back his shirt. That's my boy. Thanks Dr. Nohara. You're very welcome, Romeo-kun. You keep up being strong and healthy like this and you'll be a mage in no time. You think so? Of course. I never give false hope my patients. She reached out and pinched the young boy's cheeks. Especially ones as cute and adorable as you. Dr. Nohara stopped thought. He whined as he quickly got out of the chair, heading straight for the door to escape the pinches of his general practitioner. Rin laughed before turning to the purple flare magic user. So I'll see you again in another 6 months, Mikao-san. That's the plan. Thanks again, Rin-chan. Mikao said with a light blush on his face. You know, Rin-chan, we're both single and good-looking people. Mikao-san. A cute frown adorned the tattoo-bearing doctor's face. It is unethical to fraternize with patients and patients' family members. You aren't saying no, the fairy tale mage spoke with a sing-song voice, hope shining in his black eyes, causing Rin to roll her eyes with a laugh. Get out of my office. Mikao laughed as he took Romeo by the hand and the 2 Kinbolt males exited the room to head back to the guild. Insert music. Fate, Stay Night UBW 2015 Sorrow. Not a few seconds later did the same door open up to reveal her next patient. Rin gave a gentle smile, just as she did to all of her patients. Having a good rapport was always a plus in the hands of a doctor. It helped build trust between doctor and patient, which helped in allowing the patient to open up more when taking a medical history. Not to mention it helped with having the word spread that the sole student of Poor Lyuzuka was a part of the staff of the Magnolia Town Hospital, which helped bring in more patients to the outpatient clinic. So what brings you here so early in the year, Urza-chan? It's not a medical problem I have, Rin-san. The brown-eyed mage stated. I have something I want to talk to you about. Sure thing, Urza-chan. Though if this is a psychiatric problem, while I am more than happy to have a listen, your scheduled appointment with Yamanaka-san back at the Magic Council HQ is still to be met. You can't use me as an excuse to get out of it. Rin and Urza both laughed a little, but the Titania of Fairy Tail shook her head afterwards. It's not psychiatric either. I mean, yeah. The nightmares and the voices aren't as intense as they had been after the Guild War, but Urza shook her head. No Rin-san, that's not what I'm here to talk about. A serious expression came upon her face as Rin took note of her patient's distressed mood. Alright. I understand. No more jokes, Urza-chan. She gave a motion to the swordswoman. Just to clarify, nothing leaves this room. Patient privacy and confidentiality are part of the backbone of medical ethics. Urza nodded stiffly, accepting the response. A moment of silence passed between the two women as Urza took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. Once she did, she straightened her posture and maintained eye contact with the face tattoo-bearing doctor. Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze are my parents, Urza stated. Birds stopped chirping. The wind stopped blowing. The world felt as if it had stopped spinning after Rin heard those words. She slowly reached over to the communication lacrima on her desk and pumped a small bit of magic into the green orb. Jackie? Yes, Dr. Nohara? Cancel the rest of my evening appointments and have them rescheduled for next week. Of course, Dr. Nohara. I'll get right on it. Thanks, Jackie. She took her hand off of the lacrima before she turned back to Urza and leaned forward. She propped her arms up by her elbows while steepling her hands, her brown eyes never losing their intensity they currently held. You have my attention.